Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going, man? Welcome, sir. Welcome, everyone. We're here to finish up Discovery Tour in Assassin's Creed Origins tonight. We've got, I went and counted them this morning. We've got 33 tours left. And according to their estimates, they total 154 minutes. So we need to get cracking. We probably won't be walking to many of them tonight or taking a horse or whatever. We'll probably do them all, get to them all from the menu. So yeah, it's funny. This was only meant to be a one-day thing on Wednesday. We were just going to try it, right? But everybody, including me, liked it so much we decided to stream the whole thing. So that's what we're doing Discovery Tour tonight. As we've said the first couple of nights, for those that might be joining us for the first time, this is a free update for the game. If you have the game, you get this for free. It doesn't cost you a penny. No combat, no enemies. You're not even carrying any weapons. This is literally a tour of certain aspects of ancient Egypt. So, and just real quick, these are the different sections of the tours: Egypt in general, the pyramids, Alexandria, the city, daily Egyptian life, and the Romans, as XB1X says. So let's get busy. So how was your Saturday, gosh? Amulets and rituals. Understand how magic and religion.
If you have some time, check out Alexandria. It's one of the greatest cities in antiquity.
Was an essential aspect of ancient Egyptian life. 6 stops in 4 minutes.
Welcome to Amulets and Rituals. Ancient Egyptians believed the world was a chaotic place, filled with supernatural forces. They knew that art and words gave life and power to things. Carved with images from hieroglyphs or in the shapes of gods, amulets were highly personal objects that warded off dangers and disease while attracting success. Some amulets were temporary, intended to solve a specific problem, while others were meant to be worn forever into the afterlife.
Oh wow, I completely forgot about the text at the top. Ujat late period Mediterranean Museum. Because I put some event stuff at the top of the screen so people can see that when they follow and host and all that. So
priests would infuse amulets with magical energy during religious ceremonies, imbuing them with protective magic to safeguard against supernatural powers. The wealthiest of Egyptians could obtain a divinely ordained pendant in which was hidden a magic formula inscribed on a piece of papyrus. It would act as a unique spell tailored to the owner.
they're having a conversation, but nobody's lips are moving. Amuletic papyrus, circa 1070 to 712 BCE.
Religion was so important to ancient Egyptians that it permeated every aspect of their daily lives. Since water was the source of life and had the symbolism of purifying the body and the soul, all daily routines began with ablutions. Personal prayers to the gods were sometimes written or spoken, with family prayers passed down through generations.
We saw the libation vessel. I think it was yesterday. They're definitely reusing some of the pictures.
There was a complete calendar of each of the religious days, both good and bad, illustrating the appropriate daily rituals. Along with wine, milk, and ointments, offerings to the gods consisted of small amulets to life-size statues and family shrines. During the Greco-Roman period, offerings to the gods consisted of mummified animals, cats for Bastet, dogs for Anubis, and birds for Thoth.
Thoth. Mummies of cats. 1st century BCE. Mummified cat, Roman period, given by Captain W.A. Norman, 1928. The third one, or the second one from the right.
Deemed messengers of the gods, oracles offered guidance and judgment for all Egyptians, regardless of status. Crucial advice was offered on everything from day-to-day farming management to a pharaoh's decision on whether to start a war. Oracles were often used to decide legal issues. If the accused refused the judgment of the god, another god could be consulted in hopes of a more favorable
I could like that. Get a second opinion, please. From the gods. It's a polished stone. The god's father, prophet of Amun and Karnak, Ankh-Pared, son of Nesman, and yeah, Tad. We'll just call him Tad. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that. Some of those Egyptian names.
It was oracles that guided the Greek sailor Batos to the coast of Libya, where he founded a colony known as Cyrene.
Yep.
During Alexander the Great's campaign to conquer Persia, he consulted the oracle at the Temple of Amun within the oasis of Siwa, and was subsequently ordained a divine being.
Siwa aerial view. Okay, this is all right. This is the one in Siwa. Yeah.
Take your time. I'll wait. It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere.
It is not, good sir. All right, let's see. Let's do a couple more here. Temples and rituals, temples. Lake Mariotis. Hey, AP, how's it going? Welcome. How goes? Hold on a second. Let me get the phone charging while we go on tours. Learn about the importance of Pharaoh and of the priests in ancient rituals and understand the influence of temples in ancient Egyptian society.
Welcome to Temples and Rituals of Ancient Egypt. During rituals and festivals, the god was carried on a solar barge between the areas of a temple or the temples of different cities. Funerary carvings and paintings covering thousands of years, as well as the Book of the Dead, depict the same ship and oar design. Solar barges have been uncovered near or within several pharaohs' tombs. They were intended to carry the pharaoh into the afterlife.
Sarcophagus of, here we go again, Takapin Kansu, sistrum player of the god Amun-Ra.
Ancient Egyptians believed that Ra, the sun god, traveled the skies in a boat known as the solar barge. The solar barge was believed to cross over to mythological lands.
Naos, Naos, whatever. There's looked like a phone booth on the top of it.
The god Ra believed mankind was conspiring against him. He ordered Sekhmet, the lion-headed war goddess, to kill all humans. To his chagrin, Ra quickly realized that with all humans gone, there would be no one left to worship him.
Duh.
In order to stop the rampaging Sekhmet, beer was brewed and dyed red with pomegranate juice to resemble blood. Sekhmet drank every drop of the brew she could find, eventually passing out drunk. When she awoke, she was calmer, and her lion visage had changed into Bastet. The Festival of Drunkenness was celebrated in honor of that myth.
The goddess Bastet, 26th dynasty.
Unlike the daily rituals that took place in the temple and were performed by priests, festivals allowed the entire population of the city to participate. Festivals helped mark the passing of the seasons in the agricultural calendar. In reflecting the cycles of life, festivals offered a sense of consistency and structure for the regular citizens, thus reinforcing the sense of order that pharaohs were to provide for the citizens of Egypt as part of their godly duties.
You'll come into this area. There's a quest that brings you in here. Chamber of Thutmose, Three's ancestors.
The importance of these festivals is demonstrated by their longevity.
I'm getting there.
Records show that Osiris festivals occurred for more than 2,000 years. Some festivals serve to reinforce state control and promote the king's reign. Both the Opet and Set Jubilee festivals were specifically intended to celebrate the renewal of the king's power.
Well, it's supposed to drop on the 13th. I don't know how, I guess I should look and see how long, what's the next game we're going to do? I keep forgetting the damn name. Shadow of the Colossus. I don't know how long that's supposed to take. I'm hoping that we'll be done with that by the 13th, because I would like to actually start that the day it's released. Especially since I've got like 7 or 8 side quests lined up, because they're increasing the level cap by 10 this time instead of 5, like they did with the hidden ones. So I'll save those side quests for the beginning of that when they raise the cap. Although if it's anything like the hidden ones, there won't be any problem getting to the level cap.
The temple hierarchy consisted of high priests, several types of priests, scribes, and servants. The high priest was known as the prophet. Some divinities had up to 4 prophets, and they were the ones to perform the most advanced and complex rituals.
Statue of Nak, kneeling in prayer, head of Magi in the House of Life, 26th dynasty.
Egyptian priests were not confined to solely religious tasks, and in fact had crucial roles in Egypt's administration, most of which served to reaffirm the pharaoh as the proper vessel for the gods. Their focus within the temple was centered on the proper conduct of daily divine rituals, rather than as custodians of dogma or the indoctrination of individuals.
Kneeling priest praying, 19th dynasty. I mean, I guess if the text is short enough, you'll get the whole thing in the little part right there in the corner.
Scribes were custodians of the sacred sciences. Some priests were associated with the funeral rites and were considered the group with medical knowledge. The servants of the Ka were low-ranking priests who carried food and offerings in funerary rituals. Lector priests were distinguished by their ability to read, and their main duty was to recite specialized religious texts in both temple and funerary rituals.
Shadow of the Colossus, the version I'm going to be playing, was recently released. It's supposed to be a complete remaster of the PS2 game, which I have not played. So it's completely blind. Looking forward to obviously remastered visuals. Supposed to look fantastic on the Pro. And I'm sure it looks great on just a regular PS4 also.
Priests and all the officials who served the temple worked only 3 months a year, with each period separated by a quarter of inactivity, at least within the temple compound. Each outgoing group handed over the temple and their tools to the newcomers. Only the high priesthood remained in permanent office within the temple.
Those guys are wearing those skins that we saw last night. Essentially a full body skin with the head still attached. Yeah. Statue of Priest Hori.
The most sacred part of the temple was referred to as Jesser Jesseru, the Holy of Holies. The most sacred inner sanctuary was where the shrine to the temple deity was located. Only priests were allowed within. Offerings were given, and rituals unseen by even the pharaoh were performed. While the team chose to allow any character access to this space in some game temples, normally it was reserved for priests alone.
Edfu Temple Sanctuary, Ancient Temple Mouse, Nectenabo.
Pharaohs and their priests often chose the site of these sacred temples because of some mythological connection or an alignment with the cardinal points and certain stars. Once selected, a foundation ritual was performed. The pharaoh was required to complete 10 steps in the ritual, which required a mix of offerings as well as specific construction techniques. Once the temple was complete, construction of the chamber containing the shrine, or naos, began.
Oh, naos, okay. Foundation plaque.
The naos was where the god statue stood. The representation of the deity was usually in stone or wood and decorated with gold, silver, and precious stones. Smaller temples had only one naos, while larger complexes, such as the Temple of Karnak, had many chambers to honor gods, such as Amun, Ptah, and Osiris.
Karnak the
Each
Magnificent.
statue was
Johnny
believed to be
Carson.
a receptacle for the presence or essence of the god's Ka, enabling it to take a physical form. Through the statue, the god came to the shrine to eat, drink, and communicate with the pharaoh, or with the priests standing in for the pharaoh.
Naos of Amamsis, dedicated to Osiris. Alexandria, pink granite. We saw some of that mentioned last night. Pink and red. All right, let's do this last one on this row. Hey, misbehave! You done already? How did it go? How did your quest go? Did you get the 2 people that you wanted, or that the people that voted wanted? Oh man. So were the masses revolting? Wow, 25 stations in 8 minutes. These have got to be dense. Temples and priests. Learn about the influence of temples in Egyptian society and the role of the pharaoh and priests in ancient rituals.
Welcome to Temples and Priests.
Yeah, I mean, I was being moderately facetious when I
From its
mentioned
foundation,
rioting.
the city of Memphis favored worship of the god Ptah. The main temple of Ptah was known as Hutkaptah, meaning Palace of the Ka of
Kata.
Ptah. The name of the temple, translated into Greek as Aegyptos, would eventually evolve into the modern name Egypt.
Oh, nice. Map of Memphis. That's the Nile at the top. Well, no, it's not actually. That's Giza to the top. The Nile is right there. Like I mentioned last night, for those of you that weren't there, if you get the game, you can go up and down the Nile, and you can go on the other side, just not very far on the other side once you get over there. It's basically the beach, and that's essentially it.
Temples were the center of religious, political, and economic life in ancient Egypt. These sacred places were viewed as the literal home of the gods and goddesses. As such, every aspect of them required care and reverence, all of which was accomplished through elaborate ritual.
Hermopolis with its temple, 1997. Drawing.
Located in the center of Memphis, the Temple of Ptah was the most prominent and imposing building in the city. The long walkway leading toward the temple, known as the Dromos, was guarded by rows of sphinxes. The entire sacred area was designed to keep the statue of the god protected, deep within the sacred enclosures that surrounded it.
Temple of Ptah. Drawn by the same guy. Dude's a little grumpy.
The Dromos opened into a courtyard, with the surrounding portico graced with columns carved to resemble palm trees. During special festivals, the general population was allowed to enter this location, but under no circumstances would they be allowed into the sacred spaces beyond the courtyard.
Modern quatrefoil palmette capital. The top, I guess, of a pillar.
The Memphis Alabaster Sphinx was discovered in 1912, almost completely buried
Wow.
in water and sand. 8 meters in height and weighing in at roughly 90 tons, it is still mounted on its original pedestal. Though it is called the Alabaster Sphinx, it was in fact carved from common calcite rock, which is similar in appearance and texture to alabaster.
So he said it was 25 meter or 8 meters in height, which is about 25 feet. Bayak must be a giant. Yeah, I mean, that looks maybe a little more realistic, potentially. I mean, that doesn't look to scale.
Erosion has destroyed the original engravings, making it difficult to determine when it was created. Egyptologists believe that its facial likeness resembles Amenhotep II, and so it could have been sculpted somewhere between 1700 and 1400 BCE. It is believed that this monument once stood outside of the Temple of Ptah and was integrated into subsequent extensions to the complex.
Unidentified figure. Yeah, see? I mean, even if he's, say he's 6 feet, that's about 12. We have to be twice as big as it is.
The size of the imposing sculpture reflects the importance it had to the temple during the New Kingdom. This Sphinx is one of the few remaining artifacts from the ruins of Memphis to survive.
I'm assuming that the city of Memphis here in the U.S. got its name from this Memphis. I don't know, to be honest with you. I would assume so.
In Egyptian culture, some animals were associated with gods, while others were considered to be living gods. The Apis bull was believed to be a divine entity. The earliest mention of the Apis bull in ancient Egypt goes back as far as the first Egyptian dynasty.
Priests making an offering of lotus to the Apis bull, protected by Iset. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Excuse me. Pardon me. Tourist coming through. Oh, excuse me. It is, and it's funny. I'll say it in a minute.
The Apis bull was linked to the god Ra, with the image of the sun carried between its horns. Later it was associated with Osiris, the ruler of the underworld, thus becoming the funerary divinity Osiropis. During the 18th dynasty in Memphis, the Apis bull's association with the city's deity earned it the title Herald of Ptah. The Apis bull was so revered that even Alexander the Great, upon his arrival in Memphis, gave honor to Apis.
Statue of the divine Apis bull, late period. Yeah, I was going to say, we streamed this on Wednesday. There she is! There you go. Got a free head scratch. We were only going to do it for one night just to see what it was like, and everybody liked it so much, we decided to stream the whole thing. So, it's going to be about 3 days, 11-ish hours of streaming
the Apis bull lived
to do them all.
In a sacred barn located in an enclosure in the Temple of Ptah. Each bull bore 29 signs representative of its divinity. Among them, the bull had an eagle-shaped mark on its back, a double tail hair, and a scarab-shaped mark under the tongue. The signs were intended to correspond with the lunar cycle. After its death, Egyptians would search for its reincarnated form among the livestock.
So like a cow in that picture.
Like other living divinities, the mortal incarnation of the Apis bull was prayed to, and when it died, it was given a luxurious funeral, which included mummification. Until the reign of Ramses II, the Apis bulls were buried in individual graves in Saqqara. During the 26th dynasty, the bodies of the bulls were buried in enormous stone vats in the underground corridors of the Serapeum of Memphis.
We just throw them in a big pit, essentially. Mummified head of young Apis. And you don't necessarily have to follow the line that's on the ground. That's just the path of the tour. I mean, if I wanted to, I could climb the walls to get to the next station.
Ancient Egyptians believed that temple rituals were essential to maintain order in the cosmos. and allow communication between humans and gods. The pharaoh was required to bring offerings as part of a twofold promise made to the gods, to remain a just ruler and to prevent chaos from entering Egypt. Details of the ceremonies found on temple walls provide a thorough overview of the stages of the daily ritual. Performed 3 times a day to mirror human mealtimes, each step of the highly symbolic ceremony was accompanied by specific recitations, many of which referred to mythical events.
Papyrus showing ritual scenes performed at divine worshipper, circa 900 to 800 BCE.
The high priest would first awaken the sleeping god with a chant. Then the seals of the shrine's doors were broken and the bolts drawn back. The act of swinging open the doors was a symbolic gesture where sight was granted to the deity. The priest would then bow and kiss the ground.
Seal impression attached to a fiber tie from Tutankhamun's embalming cache. There's that same libation vessel.
With incense-infused water, and its mouth rinsed with mineral salts. The cleansing was followed by adorning the statue with jewels and royal garments. The final ritual required the priest to sweep away any footprints in order to prevent evil from approaching the god. Heredity was the primary source of new recruits. Rarely was an outsider allowed this position. At the top of the temple hierarchy was the high priest. Each temple dedicated to a god had at least one high priest devoted to its care and service. During the Ptolemaic dynasty, one family held the position of high priest in Memphis for almost 300 years.
Heresenk, daughter of High Priestess Neferber, mother of Nasisti. Whew, man, some of these names.
High priest candidates made their way up the ranks of the temple hierarchy. The one chosen to occupy the lofty position of high priest was usually confirmed by the pharaoh. Several of the high priests were also important officials in the government. Families sharing the highest priesthood titles tended to make many alliances, thereby gaining more land and wealth. Shifting balances of power sometimes resulted in more or less open conflicts between the priesthood and the pharaohs.
Priest in a leopard skin cloak with an inscription and Osiris on his skirt.
In the 21st dynasty, Thebes became the capital of an almost entirely theocratic government. The city was headed by king priests who spoke and governed in the name of the god Amun, in open opposition to the ruling pharaohs. These king priests caused a massive decentralization of power, known as the Third Intermediate Period.
Necklace with floral ornaments and plaque dedicated to Panegum, king priest of Thebes.
The educational institution in ancient Egypt was known as the House of Life. Attended by the offspring of the elite and the clergy, it was a place tailored to the social status of its attendees. The earliest references to this type of institution date back to royal decrees of the Old Kingdom.
Statue of Nok, kneeling in prayer, head of Magi in the House of Life.
Only 2 known centers have been uncovered. One in the abandoned city of Akhetaten, and one at the temple of Ramses II on the west bank of Thebes. Inscriptions uncovered in those locations mention the names and titles of people who were connected with the House of Life, such as a chief physician and many scribes. It is presumed that by the late kingdom, every temple had a House of Life. The House of Life offered training for the elite, destined for occupations such as astronomers, doctors, veterinarians, diplomats, architects, translators, or theologians. Some institutions focused on specific disciplines, making them a central hub for the country.
Astronomy, papyrus of Eudoxus.
Not limited to instruction for young students, the House of Life was a source of reference for many scholars, with rooms dedicated to papyri of many disciplines. Because papyri were preserved there, the Greco-Romans referred to the House of Life as a library.
Scribe's tablet, wow. Faded. Almost unreadable.
Ancient Egyptian economy was based on an unequal system of redistribution of goods. The state of Egypt collected the crops, and the temples distributed them throughout the provinces. Since the only people capable of counting and ensuring a fair redistribution were the educated scribes, this meant that the temples played a pivotal role in this process. There are records of pharaohs making offerings of large tracts of land and animals to temples in order to maintain their favor. Ramses III offered generous gifts to the temple of Amun in Karnak in such a manner.
Temple of, we've seen this one before too. Temple of Ramses II, offering from Ramses himself. The reign of Ramses III.
Palaces, warehouses, and granaries were built inside the temple compound to better control the redistribution of goods. The size of the recorded numbers of goods, combined with every other function filled by temples, only serves to confirm their might as economic, religious, and political centers of power within Egypt.
Thieves' Ramesseum. Granaries, 1909. Excuse me. These white circles, I think, are where NPCs can stop. You know, that's like their position when they're doing something. Because you'll notice as we go through some of these tours, there are actually people on some of them. Go ahead and do one more here, and then we'll jump over to one of the other categories, trying to keep them balanced. Also, sometimes I wonder if it's not just better to go through them in sequence within the group, because there are concepts and people and gods and pharaohs mentioned that are referenced later on, and some of the other ones, if you're bouncing around, you might have forgotten about that. Agriculture and seasons. Learn about the basic agricultural food production techniques and understand how the Nile was the center of ancient Egyptian wealth. Not just wealth, everything.
Welcome to Agriculture and Seasons.
There's a kitty. Where is he?
While crops were cultivated in different oases around the desert, most of the arable lands were near the Nile. Two types of cereal grain were cultivated, barley and an ancient wheat known as emmer. These two key ingredients contributed in establishing bread and beer as the staple of the Egyptian diet and the basis of its economy.
Ripe barley. 1353 to 36 BCE.
The Ptolemaic era created an agricultural revolution with the introduction of advanced agricultural techniques and new grain types such as rice, durum wheat, and pearl millet. The resulting agricultural mass production greatly increased the economy of ancient Egypt. It also prompted the development of storage and transportation, allowing long-distance trade with other regions.
Harvest scenes, Tomb of Mena.
Both bread and beer rations were part of a system of barter payment. The state used those goods to pay wages for those who worked in the quarries and at the construction sites. Beer was so important to ancient Egyptians, they had a goddess of beer brewing, Tenenet.
Tenenet.
Tenenet is seen in many paintings and sculptures with beer, and women are depicted as the primary beer makers.
Tomb Chapel of Rumkai. North Wall.
In order to increase agricultural production, fertile land was divided into plots and large agricultural villages were encouraged. The state and temples were the biggest landowners. Depending on the region, fertile land was managed by civil servants or rented to individuals. Ancient Egyptians relied on rudimentary tools for land cultivation. Soil was broken down with hoes, and wing plows were used to make furrows.
Maquette? Never heard that term before. Maquette of cattle and laborer.
The three seasons known as Akhet, Peret, and Shemu corresponded to a specific phase of the agricultural process and the river's natural changes. Akhet was the time of the flood, beginning with the appearance of the star Sirius in July. Heret was the time when lands were cultivated, plowed, and sown. This fell between October and November. Shemu ran from May to September and was when harvesting and taxation began.
Oh wow, taxation wasn't year-round then. Senenjem and Linferti in the fields of Iaru.
The pharaoh's duty was to uphold order against chaos and provide for his people. Priests and local governors also wanted to appear as protectors of the people. However, any variation in the Nile's seasons could cause water shortages. This had devastating consequences on wheat and barley crops. The pharaoh, administrators, and priests knew they needed to demonstrate their ability to prevent such a catastrophe from happening. And so they invented the story, which would be inscribed upon the famine stela.
Stela of King Intef, Wanaku. Yeah, that I give her a call. I would go for that. Or David Attenborough would be another one. Morgan Freeman.
The story begins with the pharaoh worried for his people. The Nile hasn't flooded in years, and his people are starving. In search of the origins of the flooding, Djoser seeks out Khnum, the protector god of the region and the source of the drought. Djoser gives the god offerings and orders his priests to restore the temple of Khnum. These offerings please the god, and the floods are restored. This story was intended to highlight the importance of the deity in everyone's daily lives, while also demonstrating the crucial role that the priests and the king played in feeding and protecting the people of Egypt.
I haven't noticed any pattern in when they do the male voice versus the female voice. Steel of the famine. You see that? You see that tree on the other side of the bank? There's a papyrus treasure by that tree. We have done all those, by the way, all the ones from the main story and all the ones that were in the hidden ones. We've done all of them that we've found anyway. Those are cool. I like those, solving the riddles, even though most of them are pretty simplistic. Ancient Egyptian cultivation, number of stations 9, 6 minutes.
Welcome to Ancient Egyptian Cultivation.
Yeah, Sanu. The more sync points that Sanu can get to, the easier it'll be for her to see them.
A great deal of water. Farmers needed to ensure they had effective, consistent irrigation. The Nile's rising and receding waters naturally irrigated most of the crops. Areas where the Nile didn't reach, such as gardens and vegetable plots, required an irrigation tool known as the shadoof. The shadoof allowed easy transport of water from its source. It consisted of a tall wooden frame with a long pivoting pole and suspended bucket.
Wasted.
The system could be raised and lowered with little effort.
irrigation using a Shadoof, even though this spelled differently up there than it is in the text. Pronounced the same, apparently, but spelt, which is a type of flower, by the way, spelt.
Later, a
S-P-E-L-T.
sakya, or water wheel, was invented. The sakya needed animals to turn the wheel, which rotated buckets through the water. It drew the water to an elevation of 3.5 meters and enabled a great deal of control over the irrigation process. This improvement supplied larger areas and thus resulted in larger harvests.
Abydos. That's one of the locations that's in Stargate SG-1. I think that was actually the planet that the movie took place on, which they go back to in the pilot for the TV show. I started watching it again, by the way.
The threshing process separated the grain from its husk.
It's so good.
Workers would spread the ears on clean ground. Oxen, cows, or donkeys were then guided back and forth to trample the grain. This continuous movement worked the grain loose while preventing the animals from eating it. Unwanted chaff and straw were swept away, or gathered and added to the mud used to make bricks, to make them stronger.
There you go. No waste. No waste. Everything is used. Harvesting, threshing, and winnowing. Winnowing! Hashtag. Where's Charlie Sheen when you need him?
Winnowing was the stage where workers used wooden scoops to throw ears in the air. The wind carried off the chaff, leaving the heavier seeds to fall to the ground. This action was repeated until the undesired materials were sifted out. Grain waste was mixed with manure or other organic substances to produce brick-shaped dung loaves that could be easily burned.
Dung loaves.
A standardized brick size enabled Egyptians to mass produce this byproduct.
There you go.
And use it as a commodity.
It must be the brick mold. Yeah, speaking of SG-1, one of the shows that I watch on Netflix is called Travelers. It's a science fiction show. And their latest season just came out not too long ago. And in the pilot, Amanda Tapping, who played Sam in SG-1, is one of the side characters. She's not a main character, but she was in the show for an episode or two. She's showing her age a little bit. Of course, SG-1 was, what, 21, 22 years ago?
Transporting large amounts of grain required ships equipped to carry heavy loads. These goods were moved during the Nile's flooding season, when the river was deep enough for large ships. The transports stopped at checkpoints to accommodate customs and police controls, as well as for technical requirements and weather conditions.
It's that's a hippodrome in the distance with the lighthouse of Alexandria way in the back. Ah, shit, I didn't look at the picture. Oh, well.
Having reached Alexandria's inner harbor, the wheat was unloaded under the supervision of a civil servant in charge of wheat management. Portions were distributed to Alexandria's city market, and the remaining stockpile was either exported or stored in warehouses.
I have the box set for the entire show, all 10 seasons, Babylon 5 as well. They don't look very good compared to the stuff you see now on Blu-ray and stuff. Still watchable, of course, but quality's not quite as good as things are these days. A little grainy. Model of a granary with scribe and overseer. I wish there was a way to get that on Blu-ray. I'd buy it in a heartbeat. Babylon 5 as well. Another one of my favorite shows.
Grain storage facilities were located across all of Egypt. Temples and institutions had large silos, while individual houses had storage sheds. In some houses, arched cellars were built into the foundations. These watertight chambers were accessible from the ground floor through a trapdoor. Royal granaries acted as the storehouse and distribution centers, and managed state payments to civil servants, soldiers, and the police. Though plastered on the inside, silos weren't completely sealed, and so remained susceptible to mice infestations.
Model of a granary with scribes. Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York.
When the grain was ready for processing, it was poured into bowls and pounded into a coarse flour. That flour was then passed through a sieve to make it of finer quality and further ground between stones. Ancient Egyptians did not stock flour. Instead, fresh grain was portioned out each time to produce flour as it was needed.
Dough balls. Dumplings! She's making dumplings. Sifting meal. Tomb of Reckmeyer. We've heard of Reckmeyer before.
The sieves used by ancient Egyptians were unable to filter out sand and stones. Grit often passed into the flour, causing long-term tooth abrasions among all classes of Egyptians.
Yeah, that was something that was mentioned in one of the previous ones too. About the sand and impurities, I guess, in general. We've seen this picture of the sieve before too. Ancient Egyptian fashion. Let's check this out. All right, Monday. Learn about ancient Egyptian fashions. This is the area that we were in before when the second tour we did, I think, when we watched the procession bring the what was it, the statue, I guess, into the temple. It's the same area. This is on the west coast of Lake.
Ancient Egyptian fashions.
Oh God, I can't remember the damn name of the lake now. Yeah, this guy right here. Mariotis, that's it. Mariotis.
Learning what life was like for ancient Egyptians presents many differences.
You'll come here fairly early in the game for the first
to how
time.
People might live today. Understanding the daily lives of regular citizens so many thousands of years ago is ultimately what connects us as human beings.
Seated couple.
Jewelry was a popular item among ancient Egyptians of all social standing. Both men and women wore earrings, rings, and bracelets. Status determined how much jewelry a person wore and what it was made of. Common folk wore pearl necklaces, simple bracelets, and leather bangles. Brightly colored earthenware and glass paste were a favorite enhancement.
Theban tomb.
The jewelry of the elite was made from gold, silver, and other precious stones. Because gold never lost its shine, it was considered akin to the flesh of the gods. Wide jeweled collars were a favorite. Made with rows of beads formed into patterns of animals or flowers, the soft chiming sounds they made were thought to appease the gods.
Broad collar of Nefer amulets. Yeah, but that took a while to make.
Though idealized, tomb paintings are a catalog of the changing fashions of ancient Egypt from the Old to the New Kingdom. Egyptians took appearance and cleanliness very seriously and were diligent about their fashion,
Hey,
hair,
Stripey
and
Beret, how's it
jewelry,
going?
as well
How you
as
doing
their
tonight?
grooming habits.
Stela of Offenmut. Yeah, there's some more NPC markers
The
behind
fabric
me.
of ancient Egyptian clothing was almost entirely made from various grades of linen. Linen was commonly white, draped over the body, and cinched at the waist, though some garments were sewn or tailored. Wealthy men wore long tunics, loincloths, or kilts, while poor men only wore loincloths.
You get a bullet,
Women
and
wore
you
long
get a bullet.
dresses, with
Everybody
differences
gets a
residing in the
bullet.
quality of the fabric, depending on social status. Egyptians commonly went barefoot, but could also
shiny
wear
stuff.
sandals made from papyrus fiber or leather.
Looks dead enough to me.
Okay, let's take it easy, especially if that's you, Stripey Beret. We're not here to string all
Who's
the sounds
next?
together.
Who wants some?
Pleated tunic.
Medic!
Cosmetics, including concoctions to prevent body odor and bad breath, were an integral part of everyday life for Egyptians.
Wasted.
Used by both
Is
men
that you
and
doing
women,
that,
guys
Stripey
cosmetics
Beret?
were used as moisturizing
If that's you
and
doing
sun
that,
protection
please
as much as
stop.
for beautification.
Don't sit there and spam
Red
all the
ochre,
buttons,
a
please.
natural clay, was the most readily
Stop.
available cosmetic to tint lips and cheeks. Henna was used on nails and lips, and as hair coloring. It was also favored by richer women to decorate their palms and the soles of their feet.
Toilet set. 18th Dynasty. We're here to do tours where it's imperative that people hear what's being said, and they can't do that if you're spamming the buttons.
Egyptians believed coal had magical powers, wearing it as black eyeliner to protect their eyes from the sun and to prevent eye infections from particles in the flooded Nile River. A special green coal, made from ground malachite, was worn for ceremonies and religious rituals.
Tomb painting representing a banquet scene. Tomb of Nibamun, Thebes. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly, and who knows if I am or not.
Women and teenage girls wore their hair long and often braided. Wealthier women included carved combs or hairpins. The length of men's hair rarely dropped past the shoulders. They were mostly clean-shaven during the dynastic period, a trend began by the elite and soon adopted by the general populace. Queen Hatshepsut donned an artificial beard when she became pharaoh.
Beard? Well, if you shave all your hair off, you don't have to worry about lice, right? Disease. Barbering. Tomb of User Hat. Userit, or something like that.
Wigs were very popular, used for special occasions or to conceal gray hair or baldness. They were fastened in place with beeswax. The most expensive wigs were made from human hair and reserved for royalty. Other wigs were composed of linen, wool, or animal hair.
I guess now I'm gonna, because Stripey Beret was playing with the buttons, I'm gonna have to see if there's some way to potentially restrict usage of the buttons or lock them down based on how many hours you have in the channel, that kind of thing, because I don't know why someone would just come into somebody's stream first time and just start hitting all the buttons. Just makes no sense to me. Curled wig, 18th Dynasty.
Prepubescent children generally had their heads shaved. Young girls kept some strands intact, while young boys had a braid worn on the side.
There you go. Statue of Harpocrates seated with side lock. Since, let's see, who's been here? AP and Gosh and Misbehave. Just out of curiosity, how many sparks do you all have right about now? I don't remember. I've been on Mixer long enough. I mean, I've got like 370,000 sparks. So I don't know. 1,000? Okay. Just trying to learn about the daily life of artisans in ancient Egypt. Oh, well, well, yeah, okay, yeah, AP, yeah, I know. I should have known AP's got a lot.
Welcome to Artisans of
It's
Ancient Egypt.
Maybe 50 is too cheap. Maybe I should make them like 200 instead. So the potentially, of course, that may not restrict anybody that much either, unless they're really, really brand new to Mixer.
It was under the
I'll have to look
watchful
into
eye
that.
of Ptah of Memphis, the god of craft and architecture, that ancient Egyptians developed the unique rendition of the world they lived in. However, it is vital to understand that their view of art, and those who created it, was likely very dissimilar to the modern concept of the word. Instead of artists, the creative culture had skilled and respected artisans. The most significant categories of specialties for crafters were drawing, painting, sculpture, and metalworking.
Ptah statue, 3rd intermediate period.
Ancient Egyptian craftspeople created both art and a wide variety of mundane, everyday tools. Every item created had a specific purpose and was produced by anonymous artisans who worked alone or with a team. Most crafts, such as pottery and metalworking, were utilized for everyday items. Luxury goods and artwork illustrations served temple rituals and were not meant for public display. Artisans rarely signed their names to the work, though they were clearly aware that they possessed a unique skill and talent for the task.
Perfume bottle in the shape of a Hess vase inlaid with the figure of a princess.
Art, in all its forms, has offered not only a practical insight into the way ancient Egyptians lived, but in how they viewed the world and their place in it. The balance of order and chaos was crucial in both the physical and the metaphysical universes. As a result, their art appears to follow
20
a
or
strict
so,
set
really?
of stylistic conventions that supported this worldview. From households and palaces to temples and tombs, pottery, papyrus, and textile items were essential to the everyday life of ancient Egyptians.
I have some that are a little, most of mine are 50, as you can see. I have a couple maybe that are 100 and several that are 250, and that's for no other reason than because of some of the language. The F-bomb, for example, is used in all of the ones that are 250. I don't know if 250 would be a restraint for people spamming them. I don't know. A pharaoh, possible Seti the First, offering a figure of the goddess Ma'at.
In ancient Egyptian culture, drawing was used as illustration, such as seen in the Book of the Dead. It was also the first step in the creation of a relief, painting, or statue. Two-dimensional representations were concerned with order and form, and were intended to honor gods and promote the transition of the soul to the afterlife.
Yeah, I think there's a way. Yeah, did you go look at their page? See how many they have? Artist sketch of Pharaoh spearing a lion. Yeah, I knew you could do it that way, but I didn't know if there was, an easier way, maybe on the website.
Stylistically, Egyptians were concerned with the depiction of the human form's inner self. As such, artistic representations were not concerned with realism, but rather with idealized youth and perfectly harmonious visuals.
Bust of Queen Nefertiti from Amarna Thutmose' workshop.
An exception to this were scenes depicting hunting and battle, where the environment and enemies moved in lively, even chaotic ways.
Yeah.
Animals and foes were depicted piled up, as if describing chaos, with Egyptians standing in solemn, disciplined poses, bringing order to the scene. Reliefs could be either in high relief or low relief. Either method required a surface suited to the desired technique. Preparation of the surfaces differed depending on the quality of the rock. A quarried block only needed a simple smoothing. Rough-cut rock monuments, such as those found in tombs, required more work. Often the surface was coated in plaster before being sculpted.
Relief from the Palace of Apries in Memphis.
For reliefs, preliminary sketches were drawn in red, then framed with a red grid to position the elements of the scenes. Corrected sketches were in black, and once approved, the scene was ready to be carved.
Interesting that it's
this method likely
backwards
explains
now.
the name given to relief makers, the one who draws the outlines.
I don't know how it is in other countries, but typically in the U.S., people generally write stuff in black ink or blue ink, and when it gets corrected by an instructor or a professor, they do that in red. It seemed backwards the way they did it here. Or not necessarily backwards, but in reverse, I guess.
Statues were believed to be vessels for the souls of the deceased, or deities. That is why a sculptor was called the one who makes it live. This divine duty earned them the utmost respect. As with a relief, creation of a sculpture began with a drawing. Most statues were made of quarried blocks of stone, primarily limestone, though sometimes harder stones such as quartzite were also used.
History of Egyptian via monuments. Carving. Nice. Excuse me, sir.
In ancient Egypt, the profession of crafter was organized and relied on a specific hierarchy. Most artisans depended on an institution to provide them with raw materials. There were 3 working levels for craftsmanship: domestic, large estates, and within palace and temple workshops. Some royal workshops, at their largest, covered an area of about 2.8 square kilometers in size.
Fragmentary model of a weaver's shop.
At the domestic level, most Egyptians were craftspeople to a greater or lesser extent. The ability to repair tools was a daily necessity. Crafted everyday items could also be bartered for at the local market. Artisans with skills but lacking in resources worked at large estates, where the elite provided them with space to work and raw materials. The most skilled artisans were employed in royal or temple projects and benefited from a special status. They were provided with good workspaces and considered to be highly skilled.
Yeah, see, there's the white, well, it disappeared, but yeah, the white circle there. Maybe that's, okay, all right, now, well, I was going to say maybe it corresponded to the person that they were talking about, because when we were here, they were talking about this dude. Oops, sorry. I don't know. Other than NPCs, not sure what the white circles are for.
An ancient text known as the Satires of Trades has a number of descriptive summaries that offer teasing glimpses into how artisans were perceived. A coppersmith was said to stink and have fingers that resembled crocodile droppings, while potters were said to be like those who lived in bogs. This view was likely exaggerated in order to highlight the most enviable position of all, that of the scribe.
Papyrus Sattler II, teaching of King Amenhotep for his son Sesostris. I wonder what the significance of the parts in red. Some kind of emphasis, I assume.
Located near the Valley of the Kings, Deir el-Medina was a settlement created by order of the king to honor the most skilled artisans. Its name translates as the Monastery of the City. Allocated a house on the initiative of the king, these craftsfolk were regarded with respect and referred to as the royal artisans. Those who lived there worked on the tombs in the Valley of the Kings and its surrounding temples.
Stela of worker Anarakau, I guess.
Archaeologists believe the site was home to skilled and respected artisans for over 400 years. It is considered one of the most important discoveries relating to Egyptian daily life. While much of the focus of Egyptian archaeology was on its kings and queens, it wasn't until the excavation of Deir el-Medina that Egyptologists were given a valuable window into the community life of ancient Egyptian artisans.
Deir el-Medina Antiquity Village, the monastery of the town, Coptic. I don't know why people get so fixated on my age and the fact that I don't have any hair rather than what's going on up there. I don't understand it. All right, evolution of pottery in ancient Egypt. Learn about the pottery and its various uses in ancient Egypt. 3 minutes, 6 stations. No time and no patience for that. Especially if it's going to be your first comments in the channel. You can do better than that.
Welcome to Evolution of Pottery in Ancient Egypt. Excavations all over Egypt have uncovered enormous quantities of pottery vessels of all shapes and sizes. The production of pottery was mainly confined to the outskirts of settlements due to the materials required and to keep the kiln smoke away from inhabited spaces. The function of the product determined the selection of the raw material, its treatment, its form, as well as the finishing of the surface.
Dark Soul, I've finished the main game and the Hidden Ones DLC. I'm at the level cap, or at least the current level cap, until Curse of the Pharaohs comes out. 45. Have all the achievements. Well, not all of the achievements yet, but I'll get the last one tonight. Yeah, I know it. You know, and I hate doing that too. You know, I don't like kicking people out of my channel. You know, I want people to be here, but if you can't act like an adult, you know, I don't want you here. You know, it's a really simple concept that people just don't seem to understand. And I understand that some of those people that do that are probably, you know, just above the minimum requirement to even be able to use Mixer. You know, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. Oh, hey, there's a grandpa streaming. Let's go make fun of him. Not necessary. Go do it somewhere else. Kenna, Arabian Village. Hey, kitty. You gonna pet the kitty? Come on, Bayek, pet the kitty. Well, I try to be.
Pottery was
Stuff like that gets my goat, though.
Egyptians' daily lives. It was used in all aspects of life, from the storage of grains and liquids to containers within the tombs of necropolises. The
Thank
most
you.
common pottery
You can't
was
have
made
my
from
Bud Light.
Nile silt that resulted in a reddish-brown clay. Limestone clay, which made for more attractive pottery, was only found in Upper Egypt.
Bricklayers, Tomb of Reckmeyer. We've seen several references of Reckmeyer, who I had never heard of before we started doing this.
Early pots were made from pinched or coiled clay, chopped straw, ashes.
Thank you, Dark
other
Soul. Thank you for that
minerals
follow.
were added, and the mixture was then
Thank
smoothed
you. Welcome to
and
the Big Blue.
decorated before
Thank you very
being
much.
put
I
in the
appreciate
oven.
that.
Pots were fired in bonfires or enclosed within a brick kiln.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right.
Early pots were made from pinched or coiled clay. Chopped straw, ashes, and other minerals were added, and the mixture was then smoothed and decorated before being put in the oven.
I wish you could
Pots
like
were
rotate
fired in
these things, you know, in
bonfires or
360
enclosed
degrees,
within a brick
especially
kiln.
stuff like this. You know, paintings and pictures and papyrus scrolls. You know, not so much, but 3D things like this. It'd
The
be great
potter's
to be able
wheel
to
was
rotate it.
utilized during the Old Kingdom. Pottery became smoother and more polished, similar to river stones. It was decorated primarily in red pigment, with the black color achieved by exposing it to smoke. Pottery workshops were attached to palaces or temples, and around the late period, specialized workshops began to appear.
Blue painted jar from Malkata.
Quartzite particles, which created the rich blue or green glazing, became common during the New Kingdom. Mediterranean motifs and tin-based glazing came with the Greco-Roman era.
It's a nice blue color. Nice deep. Not dark, but deep, if that makes any sense. Blue pottery, lotus. 19th dynasty.
Potsherds could be found anywhere, and were the most common canvas for writing or drawing, in comparison to the more expensive papyrus sheets. Named after their Greek description, ostraca contained daily life records, letters, or could be drawn upon. Artists drew sketches for temples and tombs, or simply for leisure.
Any surface. Artist painting of a hippopotamus. Oh, come on, Bayek. Paint the kitty. I painted a kitty last night. Why can't you do it, dude? There's another one. It's like herding cats, literally. Alright, fine. Come on, Bayek. You gotta pet the kitty. Speaking of achievements, when we do the last tour in daily life, there's an achievement for doing all those. That'll be the last achievement that I get that is available. We'll have them all once again. I'm actually glad, kinda, that people wanted to see more after we did this the first night, right? So we take the time to go through them and read everything and listen and look around and all that stuff, because otherwise I probably would have just done it off screen and just ripped right through them just to get the last achievement and been done with it. So, learn about the family life and homes of ancient Egyptians.
Welcome to the Egyptian household.
You go feed her? No. Scratch the head. Do it again. There we go. I'm gonna feed her. I tell you, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I have an unhealthy affection for that bird. I love that bird.
In pre-Greco-Roman culture, women were considered equal to men in many matters. They owned property, testified in court, could divorce and inherit. Until the Greeks and Romans restricted their rights, Egyptian women could take over their deceased husband's trade.
Oh, nice.
Marriage contracts included mentions of allowances and items of value brought to the marriage by the woman, which would forever belong to her.
Wow. Prenup kind of thing, I guess. Pear statue of Nebuah and his wife, Tenethet, sorry. New Kingdom. Chickens!
Certain professions were open only to women, such as weaving or professional mourning, while others were available to both genders, including working as servants for the rich households. Social status did have an impact, though. The higher in status, the easier it was to obtain education and access different professions.
A professional mourner? What, you just pay somebody to come cry at a funeral or something? I'll have to look that up later and see exactly what that is. Weavers. Tomb of Numatep.
Homes were generally composed of 3 rooms. First, there was the entrance, furnished with a small bench of brick, probably intended for a statue and protective divinity. Then there was the ceremonial room, meant to receive guests. The last room was either a bedroom or kitchen. Furniture consisted of basic chairs, chests, and storage. Tables were not used for family dinners. Instead, each individual had a small table of their own.
You get to go into some of these. I don't know if there are any in this area, but I know in Siwa there are a bunch of them that you can go into.
Marriages were a social contract rather than a religious construct. Family was vitally important to ancient Egyptians, and children were considered a blessing from the gods.
As they should be.
The father, mother, and their children were the nucleus of the family, and cohabitation sometimes extended to mothers-in-law, sisters, aunts, and sisters-in-law.
Marriage contract, literally. On a papyrus scroll, looks like.
Status and wealth played a large role in the style and size of ancient Egyptian homes. Commoners' houses were built with sun-baked mud bricks. Wealthier homes were often painted in white and decorated with various motifs.
Oh, nice. Model of a porch and garden. You get to go in, well, yeah, I guess you could. That girl, Shadia, that I had mentioned before, there's a side quest around her. Takes you through, to and through a house like this.
Town officials and the rich lived in mansions with numerous rooms that were luxuriously decorated. Only temples and tombs meant to last for all eternity were built with stone.
Nebamoom, supervising estate activities. Tomb of Nebamoom. See a lot of these too.
Funeral stone inscriptions focused on the main member of a household. Encircling this person would then be a spouse, parents, and children, possibly even siblings. These stones were so structured because there were no surnames in ancient Egyptian culture.
Oh, really?
Parents and children were a sort of family tree, which allowed for the identification of the deceased.
No surnames. Stela of Tetu and Nefertiti.
There is so much to discover.
There is. Last one in daily life. We should get a bloop after this one. Why, thank you. First country to be deemed civilized, is that what it said? Howeris Gnome, learn about the cultivation and use of oil in ancient Egypt. 3 stations, 3 minutes.
Welcome to Oil in Ancient Egypt. Castor, sesame, and moringa were the source of the most common oils in ancient Egypt. Oil was used for various purposes: cosmetics, medical treatments, nutrition, perfume, athletics, and rituals, to name a few. The team decided to use oil as an explosive to add more gameplay opportunities for the player.
And we thank them for that. Sealed amphora containing oil. Although I didn't use that intentionally that often. I never really got close enough to anybody. Tried to anyway. Tried to not get close to people where they could hurt me. Kill them from a distance.
Ancient Egyptians originally used castor oil in wick lamps, but also for cosmetics, such as facial and hair treatments. There is mention in some papyrus of castor oil being prescribed to treat constipation and help pregnant women. Castor beans were found in ancient Egyptian tombs as early as 4000 BCE.
4000 BCE.
Castor oil was made by pressing the beans from the plant of the same name.
Lamp.
Olive trees were present, though scarce, in ancient Egypt's early history, and olives were mostly imported from Syria and Palestine. Their use and cultivation remained uncommon until the mass arrival of Greek settlers during the reign of the Ptolemies, when demand increased sharply. Olive trees were normally found in the region of the Fayum and the lands surrounding Alexandria.
Fayum is down at the bottom of the map. Not at the very bottom, but close. It's another lake down in that area. Hand clutching an olive branch, circa 1353 to 1323. All right, let's see. Do we want to do Egypt? Do we want to do pyramids? Or do we want to do Alexandria, the city? We obviously have the most to do in Egypt. Let's see, do we have any long ones in any of these? 3, 4, 3, 4. We've got 7. We'll do this one. The Islands of Pharos. Just 1 second, please. Yeah, there's the lighthouse up there. The city is back that way. Learn about the islands of Pharos and the monuments located on the islands.
Welcome to the Islands of Pharos.
Pharos.
The Heptastadion was a bridge-like causeway connecting the island of Pharos to mainland Alexandria. Its name is based on the Greek terms of measurement, hepta, meaning 7, and stadion, which is a measure of length of roughly 180 meters.
It's over 1,000, right?
Since its construction would separate the Grand Port to the east and the Port of Eunostos to the west, it was designed with channels at each end. These openings allowed passage from one port to the other.
Jean-Claude Gauvin contributed a lot of drawings. Alexandria, Canopic Way.
Along with creating separate harbors for the commercial and military shipping, the causeway served as a main aqueduct for the island's inhabitants. Its presence also helped protect the island and its ports from rough wind and sea currents. At the end of antiquity, the Heptastadion disappeared under layers of silt and soil, which formed an important sedimentary deposit.
Buried. Map of Alexandria, 1575. Unfortunately, we don't have Big Bird tonight. I guess you don't get your mounts or your weapons in this. You just get the standard stuff. No weapons, but standard mounts.
While the Serapion was the most celebrated of the temples in Alexandria, many other temples were built within the city. Most of these structures have been completely erased over time, and there is no way to discern how many existed.
Yeah.
However, research
Like
of
the
ancient
library, it's a
papyri
shame.
offer tantalizing hints as to the possible location of at least some of the temples.
Alexandria and its environs. View of the obelisk known as the Needle of Cleopatra and the Tower of the Romans. Excuse me, can I bring my horse in?
Both papyri and coins reveal evidence of many temples built for the gods. Poseidon, the god of the sea, likely had an edifice in his honor west of this island, as well as on the mainland. This temple next to you is dedicated to Isis Feria, the divine protector of the lighthouse. This location hosted annual celebrations in the month of April, known as the Sacrum Feria, in connection to the lighthouse. In her incarnation as Isis Fortuna, the goddess carries a rudder and a cornucopia, both symbols of good luck for navigators.
Statue. Fortuna.
Considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was a source of great pride for the inhabitants of the city. Construction began under Ptolemy I's reign and lasted 15 years. It was completed during his son's rule. Once completed, the lighthouse was dedicated to the gods for the salvation of those who sail the sea.
Hey, Pre-Dawn, thank you for the follow. Thank you for that very much. Welcome to the igloo. How you doing tonight? How's your Saturday or Sunday, I guess, depending on where you live? Island of Pharos. Isis Feria, divine protector of sailors, Roman Empire. Yeah.
Built on the island of Pharos, the stone structure was 3 tiers set on top of one another in a step formation. The second floor consisted of an octagonal tower, and the top floor was a cylindrical tower topped by a statue. The interior provided space for staff rooms and a ramp which allowed the transport of fuel to the upper floors.
You do have an opportunity to go up there in the main game too. Alexandria Lighthouse, 1995, Mr. Goldvin again. Yeah.
Essential to safe navigation through the rifts and shallow waters, the Pharos was a functioning lighthouse with a beam reportedly visible 50 kilometers away. It's unclear what kind of fuel was used or how much. Any other details of how the light worked remain a mystery.
Yeah, because it's just like everything else in Alexandria, it's gone.
For several centuries, the Pharos was one of the highest monuments ever built by man. It measured roughly 110 meters in height, compared to the Pyramid of Giza, which was around 140 meters tall. Gradually, the structure was eroded by earthquakes and then completely destroyed in 1480 CE, when a fort was built over it. Archaeological excavations on the seabed have uncovered many blocks from the ancient building.
Alexandria currency under Hadrian. Hadrian. You just give up on trying to pronounce these the right way. Most of the time I'm wrong. Yeah. Do I get to keep my horse if I'm on it when I fast travel? Usually you don't. Whoa! Oh, get out of the way. Combat roll! Learn about the city of Alexandria and the canopic way. Whoa!
Welcome to Introduction to Alexandria. After conquering Egypt in 331 BCE, Alexander the Great decided to build a new city, which, as per his habit, he named after himself.
Per his habit.
After his death, Alexandria quickly became the capital city of the Ptolemaic kingdom and the most important city of the Greek world.
Yep. We've seen this picture too. Battle of Issus between Alexander and Darius III.
The city was built between the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Mareotis, which resulted in Alexandria becoming a crucial cultural hub and trading center.
One of the ones we did last night said that Lake Mareotis is 17% the size it was at the time of the game.
Sumptuous buildings could be seen wherever one turned their gaze. The royal palaces, the many temples, the gymnasium, lush public gardens, and large avenues.
Alexandria Palace, Cape Lochias.
With its incomparable beauty and advantageous geographic location, Alexandria attracted foreigners, intellectuals, and traders. One of the most cosmopolitan cities of the ancient world, Alexandria supplanted even Athens as the most important Greek city in history.
Amphitheater. Let's see, I think the library is the building to the left of the amphitheater. That's what they said last night.
Egyptian obelisks were highly prized by Roman architects. While Roman design previously favored the use of a single monument, Egyptian obelisks tended to come in pairs and were generally located at the entrance of temples. Several ancient Egyptian obelisks are still in existence today, though many are spread out across the world in locations such as Paris, Rome, New York, and London.
We have
All of
one
this
in
shows that
DC.
Alexandria was significantly influenced by the rich past of Egypt.
Essentially the shape of it, right? Obelisk, Paris Concorde, 2016, Ubisoft.
Alexandria had several main streets. Its most famous artery was the Canopic Way. It was lined with sumptuous buildings, houses, and temples, and was roughly 8 kilometers in length. This street was one of the most important shipping entrances to Alexandria, and often hosted processions and festivals.
And wide enough, too. They mentioned the first night. Wide, flat streets.
The width of the street, 30 meters, was abnormally large even by Greek standards. This is likely because the Canopic Way was made in a short span of time and based on an urban plan, as opposed to being slowly built over time, as was usual for the era.
It almost looks like the Hippodrome with chariots racing in the street. Hippodrome is straight ahead, the direction that he's currently going.
The Canopic Way originated in the western cemeteries, skirted the gymnasium, and then exited the city to head east through massive doorways towards Canopus. This structure was known as the Canopic Door.
At least I think we're pointing east. Yeah, we're pointing east. There's the Hippodrome right there. Okay. Let's see. 5 more to do in Alexandria. Coming up on the halfway point. We may actually go long tonight. We will finish it tonight. Get all these done. True or false, a 40-million-year-old fossil of a whale skeleton is found in the Egyptian desert. I think that's true, isn't it? City of Celebration. Learn about the various forms of entertainment that existed in Alexandria. 3 minutes, 4 stops.
Welcome to Alexandria, City of Celebration. Like most Greek cities, Alexandria offered multiple forms of entertainment. Most were related to cults, religious practices, and the festivities surrounding those practices. Among those festivities, the most important ones were the dynastic celebrations, instituted in honor of the deified Ptolemaic kings and queens. These celebrations could go on for many days and included sacrifices, offerings, processions, and public banquets.
Wrestlers, such athletes would appear during the Ptolemaic, the Royal Games, Ptolemaic era.
How shall I sing of thee, brightly shining one?
Games and competitions were organized whenever possible in locations such as the stadium, the hippodrome, and the gymnasium. The residents of Alexandria favored such events where athletes, poets, and musicians from Egypt and other cities of the Greek world competed.
Face with figures in red, okay. detailed description that one was. Amphitheater.
Like all good Greek cities, Alexandria had a theater. The architecture of this structure is Roman in style. This is because the team duplicated a theater from Cyrene. Roman theaters were usually semicircular and built from scratch on a flat area with structures designed to enhance oration. Greek theaters were more oblong in shape, similar to a horseshoe, and favored the slopes of natural hills to support their acoustics.
It's falling apart at the edges. The hills and valleys of Greece. Epidaurus Theater, 20th century.
At the theater, one could witness the plays of contemporary comic and tragic authors. The play you are witnessing below is Menander's Dyskolos, more commonly known as the Grouch, a late and popular entry in the Greek comedies.
It looked like they're just standing around. Doesn't look like much of a play to me. Ostrakon with Menander's sentences.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.
Education. Learn how young Alexandrians were educated. 2 minutes, 3 stops. Ate while reclining on one elbow.
Welcome to Education in Alexandria. The education of young Alexandrians did not differ from the one generally dispensed elsewhere in ancient Greece. At the age of 7, the child was taken in charge by a tutor, who then became responsible for instilling an elementary education as well as good moral principles.
It's the people in red on a vase. Bowl. Oh, wow, that's even more descriptive.
Teaching was generally done outside, in the open air. In the gymnasium, students were taught not only sports, but also topics such as rhetoric, philosophy, music, and poetry. All things deemed essential to one's education at the time.
Archaeological site of Olympia, Greece Gymnasium. (2007) UNESCO.
Here, both girls and boys are shown attending a class given by one of the rhetoricians of the era. The team made the choice to show both genders attending class within the context of the game world. Even though it is historically inaccurate, the team felt it was not necessary to prioritize historical sexism over inclusive gameplay.
The Mosaeon. Learn about the Mosaeon of Alexandria and its function within the city. 4 and 4.
Welcome to the Mosaeon of Alexandria. The Moseon was a sector of the city commissioned by Ptolemy I to rival Athens' Academy as an institute of intellectual pursuit. Dedicated to the 9 inspiring muses, the Moseon became a great center for philosophical and scientific enlightenment. It welcomed scholars from many kingdoms, inviting them to share knowledge in literature, science, and geography.
Sarcophagus of the Muses. About the Muses. This library is dedicated to invoke the 9 daughters of Zeus, sometimes called the Muses, recruited by Osiris. They are known as Calliope, Clio, Euterpe, Erato, Melpomene, Polyhymenia, Terpsichore, Thalia, and Urania. They are the goddesses of arts, key to the good life, in the name of Herodotus's Historiae books.
The Moseon was designed so that its buildings and grounds would accommodate free thinking, debate, and presentation. Meeting spaces and theaters surrounded a main courtyard. Expansive gardens were filled with exotic plants that aided in the study and supply of herbs and medicines. A zoo offered the study of animal behavior and physiology. Also among the Moseon's many star attractions was its astronomical observatory.
That almost looked like my green screen stand. Right there. Mine is made out of PVC.
Herophilus was a physician who lived most of his life in Alexandria. He was able to perform the dissection of human cadavers on a large scale due to the permissiveness of the city in such matters. Among many other discoveries, he learned that the brain was central to the human nervous system. He also extensively mapped the blood system and measured the pulse with the aid of a water clock.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
That in his thirst to understand
yes, please
human
get your rest.
Anatomy, he performed
Have a good night.
600
See you later.
vivisections on live prisoners.
You say live prisoners? His thirst to understand human anatomy. Wow, 600 vivisections on live prisoners. Water clock fragment. Clepsydra.
In order to be free to pursue their research, scholars were fed and housed at the Moseon at the government's expense. This freedom provided Alexandria's scholars a meeting space for intellectual pursuits and a haven for spiritual peace. Though nothing remains of the original Moseon, it lives on as the legacy of our modern museums.
Market Gate of Miletus, a well-preserved Greek city. Mr. Bayek. Sarpeion of Alexandria. Long live the sheep! Wow, its milk was preferred over a cow's.
Take your time. I'll wait. It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere.
Sarpeion of Alexandria, or Serapion, Sarpeion, I don't know. Its function within the city.
Welcome to the Serapion of Alexandria. In a city of numerous magnificent attractions, the Serapeum was considered to be the most beautiful temple of Alexandria. Located southwest of the city, on a small hill known as the Acropolis, the sanctuary was constructed during the reign of Ptolemy III, upon foundations which had existed since the reign of Ptolemy I Soter.
It's Lake Mariotis in the background. Mr. Jean-Claude again. You see over here to the right, I think it was, yeah, they covered up some of the boobs with shells. Ubisoft did.
Visitors of the Serapeum climbed 100 steps to reach the courtyard. Libraries were installed in the porticos surrounding the square building, with its roof and columns adorned with gold and gilded bronze. Pharaohs were generous to the temple, as were several Roman emperors after Egypt's conquest. An inner temple housed the statue of Serapis, dedicated to healing the sick.
You've seen that plaque before, foundation plaque of the Serapeum in Alexandria.
Since the 26th dynasty, Greeks in Egypt had gradually integrated the Egyptian cult of the Apis bull to their own rituals. With the establishment of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the cult of Apis was further integrated into Greek religion. During his rule, Ptolemy I chose to merge Egyptian and Hellenic gods into a syncretic divinity named Serapis. This name was the result of the amalgamation of Osiris and Apis. With this new deity, the Ptolemaic dynasty managed to accommodate similar belief sets for two different cultures, bringing about a new dynastic cult.
Serapis bust with Colothos from Alexandria from the Serapeum.
Serapis was also
Are
associated
you bored back
to
there,
other
sir?
deities, including Asclepius, a Greek god of healing. It is possible that, as with the Serapis Temple of Canopus, the sick would visit this sanctuary, sleeping there overnight in the hopes of being healed within its hallowed halls.
Pendant with a scene with Serapis, Isis, a snake, and Harpocrates. Last one for Alexandria. Egyptians were among the leading glass workers of the world. Panaeon?
Welcome to the Panaeon. The Panaeon was a temple built in honor of the god Pan, divinity of nature. This Greek god, often represented as a half-man, half-goat, with a beard, horns, and goat's hooves, was considered the protector of shepherds and herds.
Pan seated with Greco-Roman era grapes in hand and a dagger.
Pan's attribute was his namesake musical instrument, the pan flute. His temples were usually located
More
in
shells.
caves and on high mountains, and were frequented by shepherds. It is likely that Mediterranean cults adopted the imagery of Pan to symbolize the Christian devil.
Temptation of Christ.
To give proper honor to the god, Alexandrians built an artificial hill upon which they housed his temple to compensate for the flat relief of the city. The artificial mound had the shape of a spinning top or a pine cone, which was accessed by a spiral staircase. The top had a panoramic view of the entire city. Only such heights would be fitting for a mountain god.
Alright, that should be it for Alexandria. I don't know why that side of my head is itching as much as it is. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 left. Alright, let's do the pyramids. Pyramids are probably the most fascinating part of ancient Egypt to me, anyway.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.
Sneferu's pyramid at Medeum, or Meidum.
Welcome to Sneferu's first pyramid. With the long reign of Sneferu, the first king of the 4th dynasty, the most brilliant and creative period began for the construction of funerary monuments in Egypt. Funerary monument design moved from the step pyramid to the smooth-faced pyramid, testament to the evolution of the practices of construction. The first attempt at this design was the Pyramid of Meidum.
Scenes from the king's 30-year jubilee, probably Sneferu.
While Sneferu's monument started as a 7-stepped pyramid, it was later altered into an 8-stepped structure. The final phase of construction saw the steps filled out and an outer casing applied to achieve a smooth surface.
Medeum pyramid section.
The smooth dressing of the walls did not provide sufficient bonding, however, and the outer casing did not rest on sound foundations. As a result, the bases of the 4 outer buttress walls gave way, causing the walls to slide down and collapse. While the Meidum Pyramid was abandoned due to design flaws, it showcased other innovations that would impact all future pyramid designs.
Egyptian breakfast service of Napoleon I, also known as the breakfast service of the emperor.
As well as the smooth sides, it was the first time a ceremonial pavement was built, leading from the valley to the temple of the pyramid. Another innovation was that of the funerary chamber, which was no longer at the bottom of the well, but rather above ground level. This change signaled the beginning of the 3-bedroom system.
Meidum spelled differently this time, just like we saw something else earlier. Approach and Causeway by Petrie and Wainwright. 1910. Pyramids of the Middle Kingdom. Learned about the various funerary monuments of the Middle Kingdom.
Welcome to Pyramids of the Middle Kingdom. During the Middle Kingdom era, the powerful rulers of the 12th dynasty resumed the tradition of elaborate pyramidal tombs. For example, Amenemhat I built a funerary complex in Lisht, and Senusret II selected the Elahun site in the Fayum. Amenemhat II and Sesostris III, however, cast their favor towards Dashur. Amenemhat III built a pyramid there as well before moving to Hawara in the Fayum.
Pyramids of Elahun, Hawara, Bahmu, and El Kufa use plans and sections by Pairing Day and Hague.
The plundering of tombs in troubled times prompted the architects of the Middle Kingdom to devise increasingly complicated means of security during construction. As such, while the architectural plans of the Hawara pyramid were simpler than the one at Dashur, the means used to protect it from looters were much more elaborate. Beyond the use of blind passages and concealed trapdoors, the architects relied on a system of stone slabs, which were slid into place at the end of construction. These massive stone slabs were meant to permanently block the passageways leading to the funerary chambers.
Hawara Labyrinth.
The kings of the 13th dynasty began building their pyramids at Mazguna, south of Dashur, then moved on to Fayum and Abydos. The kings of the 17th dynasty, however, satisfied themselves with crowning their cave tombs with small pyramids of raw brick. The kings of the 18th dynasty gave up the shape of the pyramid as a royal tomb entirely. They chose a mountain with a pyramidal shape in the Valley of Kings and dug their graves there.
Valley of the Kings, Thebes.
It was not until the Nubian pharaohs of the 25th dynasty that kings were once again buried under pyramidal tombs. In fact, today, the area of ancient Nubia, modern Sudan, contains a record number of 220 known pyramids to Egypt's 138. Despite their slow decline in use and quality, pyramids continued to fascinate all and sundry up to the Roman era. They remain to this day a symbol of the religious dedication of the pharaohs and the grandeur of ancient Egypt.
Archaeological sites on the island of Meroe, Sudan. That's a lot of them in a small area. It's fenced off. There she is. Can't feed her or anything. It'll interact with that last station. You use the Y button on the controller to do that. It'll pick one of the 3 different things. You can either pet the back of her head or rub her neck or feed her. It's random. Giza necropolis. Learn about the plateau hosting most famous necropolis of ancient Egypt. This is another short one.
Welcome to an overview of the Giza necropolis.
Overview.
The Giza Plateau is located on the west bank of the Nile and was considered by ancient Egyptians as the domain of the dead. The pyramidal complexes found there were built over the span of 3 generations, during the reign of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure.
We've seen this before as well. Pyramids of Giza, different spelling than what we're used to seeing.
The Giza area, now famous for its 3 pyramids, is part of a wider grouping of funerary complexes. Rulers from this period generally elected to be buried in the area. The focal point of the entire region was the city of Memphis, chosen as the capital of Egypt at the beginning of the Old Kingdom.
Temple and Sphinx.
The placement of the Giza monuments, and particularly that of the pyramids, followed a practical yet strict alignment. First, they focused on cardinal points, and then they accounted for the natural geology of the plateau.
Topographic plan for a part of the Memphis necropolis. Khufu's funerary complex. 7 minutes, 11 stops. Learn about Khufu's funerary complex.
Welcome to Khufu's funerary complex. The Valley Temple was the first architectural component encountered when one entered the funerary complex. It was considered the official entrance of the tomb and mixed the structural components of both a temple and a portico. Khufu's Valley Temple shows evidence of a basalt pavement, letting us know where the portico portion of the structure was located. Such a partition is believed to symbolize both the subterranean and solar aspects of the afterlife.
We've seen this as well. Pyramid of Giza during the Old Kingdom. Mr. Golvin.
Khufu's causeway ran from the floodplain up to the plateau, linking together the Valley Temple and the Mortuary Temple. A traditional causeway presented itself as a paved path, enclosed by walls and often roofed.
Same picture.
Fragments discovered by archaeologists indicate that the walls in Khufu's causeway, one of the longest known to us, were decorated with carvings and possibly paint. Depictions show a great variety of themes: stars on the ceiling, accompanied by scenes of battles on the walls. Other engravings depicted the creation of the complex by illustrating craftsmen at work.
Relief fragment with King Khufu's cattle, 4th Dynasty, Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York.
The most
I've seen that
impressive
picture,
private
too.
cemeteries of Giza are located east and west of Khufu's pyramid. The eastern cemetery was reserved for members of the royal family, while the western cemetery was mostly set aside for various court dignitaries. In both areas, private tombs, also known as mastabas, were aligned and laid out methodically in streets and avenues. This arrangement was probably an attempt at recreating the king's court for the afterlife. To the east of Khufu's pyramid reside three smaller constructions, the three Queen's Pyramids. A sloping passage led from the ground surface to a burial chamber, cut out of the bedrock and lined with masonry. If it seems quite certain that these monuments were intended for Queen's burials, the identity of the original occupants is hard to assess.
Same picture, but just with 3 pyramids.
The northernmost pyramid was most likely meant for Queen Hetepheres, who is believed to have been Khufu's mother. However, in 1925, her actual tomb was discovered nearby by accident. It was hidden at the bottom of a deep masonry pit in an underground chamber. Within the concealed chamber, Egyptologists discovered the most complete royal funerary equipment, dating from the Old Kingdom, though her body was missing.
Hetepheres, I guess. Chair wood and gold leaf. 79 centimeters by 71 centimeters from Giza, Egyptian civilization. Old Kingdom, Dynasty 4.
Within the vicinity of Khufu's pyramid, Egyptologists have uncovered 7 boat pits. The exact function of such boat-shaped pits remains unconfirmed, though one can easily conjecture that it was symbolic in nature. The boat pits
No
being
water.
located at the eastern side of the pyramid, at the precise spot where the resuscitated king was supposed to reappear, could constitute evidence to support such an assumption.
Khufu's solar boat on display at the Solar Boat Museum. Giza Al-Giza, Al-Giza, Egypt.
The 2 southern boat pits, each covered by a roof of huge limestone slabs, were discovered in 1954 by Kamal al-Malak, an Egyptian Egyptologist. Only one of them had been opened. 1,224 boat parts made of cedar wood were retrieved one by one and patiently reassembled by the master restorer Ahmed Youssef. This process took 28 years.
28
Youssef worked
years?
by following lines of mortise and tenon joints and by stitching parts together with vegetable ropes, all in order to keep the design as authentic as possible. The Greek term pyramidion refers to the capstone of a pyramid or the tip of an obelisk. In ancient Egyptian, both components were called ben-ben. This word was also used for a specific kind of food, a cone-shaped offering made of bread. The pyramidion was intended to be a miniature reproduction of the pyramid, making it equal to the monument itself in symbolic importance.
Heliopolis, first Ben-Ben pyramid shape.
A few pyramidia have been retrieved from pyramidal complexes. The earliest, found in Dashur, is undoubtedly a good example of Old Kingdom's pyramidia. It is made of limestone and has no inscriptions. Some engraved pyramidia were recovered from private funerary chapels. Their inscriptions all related to the solar symbolism of the Benben.
Pyramidium of Poetry, New Kingdom. National Museum of Antiquities, Leiden.
The pyramidia of the pyramids of Giza were never recovered. The reconstitution you see in the game is fictive, incorporating a golden pyramidion bearing inscriptions relevant to Khufu.
There's a side quest in the Hidden Ones DLC where you put, doesn't look like this, but you put the pyramidion on top of a obelisk. It's part of a quest to get a weapon. Khafre's Funerary Complex.
Welcome to Khafre's Funerary Complex.
Alien King, thank you, sir.
Since the
Thank
very
you
beginning of
for
the
the
Fourth
host.
Dynasty,
Welcome, everyone.
mortuary temples were built adjacent to pyramids on the eastern side. Such a location, facing the rising sun, as well as the world of the living as a whole, held an important symbolic meaning.
No, that's fine. No
For
worries.
it was within the
No
mortuary
worries.
temple that kings were revived
You have a life.
through daily rituals.
Pyramid of Giza, the same picture as before. Yeah, I saw the notification pop up earlier when you started. I would have come by, but I think it was just a few minutes before I was getting ready to start myself, so.
In its standard form, a mortuary temple was divided into two parts. A front area which consisted of a vestibule and a courtyard, and an area in the back, where all sacred elements were located. The back of the temple incorporated several essential features, including an inner sanctuary with a false door, which allowed the soul of the pharaoh to travel between the world of the dead and the world of the living.
Yeah, we've seen something similar to this too. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. False door from the tomb of Metajetjai. Old Kingdom.
The largest of all such structures, Khafre's mortuary temple was entirely built with megalithic blocks of limestone from a nearby quarry and encased with granite. Parts of Khafre's mortuary temple, particularly the courtyard walls, are thought to have been decorated with splendid reliefs. However, not a single image of the king has been discovered inside the mortuary temple.
Archers. My favorite weapon of any weapon in any game is the bow. I love the bow.
Khufu's direct successor, Jedefre, followed the custom which required each king to establish a new site for their funerary accommodation, and chose Abu Rawash as his last resting place. When the time came to build his own funerary complex, Khafre, also one of Khufu's sons and the successor to Jedefre, broke with tradition and returned to Giza. Not only did Khafre thumb his nose at tradition, but he did so in a way which he hoped would allow him to overshadow his father's most important monument.
Statue of Pharaoh Khephren, reign of Khafre. Museum of Egyptian Antiquities.
Though Khafre's pyramid is smaller than Khufu's, it was cunningly built on a more elevated bedrock layer than the Great Pyramid, making it appear higher than any other pyramid at Giza. Today, Khafre's pyramid is the only one among the three at Giza that still has the upper part of its limestone casing.
Oh, nice. Pyramids of Giza by Johann Martin Bernatz, circa 1837.
Considered a most sacred area, the Giza necropolis was strictly defined, both geographically and physically. An 8-meter thick Tura limestone wall completely surrounded the Great Pyramid. The only way inside would have been through the mortuary temple.
Pyramid of Giza during the Old Kingdom. It's like they've got, it's almost like this is just one huge picture and they're just giving you little pieces of it. He got the drawing of the entire area. They're all done by the same person.
From the reign of Sneferu and onwards, the subsidiary pyramid became a common feature within the pyramidal complex. The function of the subsidiary pyramid, however, smaller in size and in height than the royal tomb, remains unclear, though some believe that it was meant to house the Ka of the pharaoh.
Yeah, see? Same picture. Another corner.
In mainstream media, the Ka is often defined as the soul of the deceased. The truth is a bit more complicated. Within the ancient Egyptian funerary belief system, the Ka was a component of a living person, which separated itself from the body at the time of death. It represented the deceased's vital essence. In order for the deceased to ascend to a new life, whether in this world or the next, the Ka had to be embodied in a statue, and its existence maintained through offerings and rituals.
We've seen this before too. Book of the Dead, Papyrus of Nebked.
Within Khafre's subsidiary pyramid, a wooden box containing pieces of cedar was discovered by archaeologists. When reassembled, it turned out to be a shrine mounted on a sled. Just as with the solar barges found around Khufu's pyramid, it seems Khafre's shrine and sled were ritually disposed of after his funeral.
Papyrus, Book of the Dead, details showing the funerary procession with barge, Ptolemaic era. Hey, C-Star, I see you've said see that you've said something, but we haven't seen it in chat yet. Alright, what's left? We got one more in the pyramids. Then all we've got left to do is 9 in Egypt, and we'll be all done. Alien King, we decided to do them in vertical slices because there were references to information within the, within each group, rather than doing all the bouncing around and we did the first couple of days. Menkare's funerary complex.
Welcome to Menkare's funerary complex. The dimensions of Menkare's pyramid are much less grandiose. However,
hello,
unlike its
hello, there it
predecessors,
is.
Menkare's pyramid
Happy
shows a
Saturday.
great
Happy
deal of
Saturday to you too,
complexity in
even though
its
it's
internal
Sunday
and
for
external
you.
finish. The outside was partially covered in red granite, while the internal walls were richly decorated. This latter innovation would not catch on until the end of the 5th dynasty, when pyramid texts began to adorn the walls.
Oh, I didn't know you were here. Oh, you're okay. Another of your trips here. Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, you're way behind me now, so it's dinner time for you. It's got to be about dinner time. Sepulchral Chamber, Third Pyramid by Howard Weiss and Paring, 1840. Operations carried on at the pyramids of Giza in 1837. Hey, hey, I could go for that for dinner, yes.
Menkare's pyramid
Doesn't have to
contains
be
two
steak and
sloping
potatoes.
passages, both located in the northern side of the structure.
Or pasta.
The upper one was abandoned during the construction phase, whereas the lower one, slightly above the base of the monument, constitutes the real entrance. The lower passage leads to a first room, which, for the first time since the reign of Djoser, is decorated with engraved false doors.
Yeah, exactly. I would replace the beer with a margarita, but that's me. Section through center of Third Pyramid by Howard and Paring again. Excavation made by Hal Weiss. Yes, indeed. Well, margaritas go good with everything, pretty much, as far as I'm concerned. I should have one tomorrow.
While Menkare's pyramid complex was unfinished at the time of his death, it was hastily and somewhat shabbily completed by his successor, Shepsakov. Even so, this funerary structure marks a watershed in the history of this kind of monument. From then onwards, the pyramid shrank, whereas the mortuary temple expanded both in its quantitative and qualitative aspects. Of particular note, it is within Menkare's mortuary temple that one can find the heaviest block of limestone ever used for a pyramid complex, weighing in at over 200 tons.
200 tons. Yowzer. Yeah, so what is a Lynchburg lemonade other than lemonade? Seated statue of King Menkare. Reign of Menkare, Rogers Fund, 1937. It is. It is indeed. This is actually very cool if you're interested in ancient Egypt at all.
By the king's successor, whereas the lower part was nothing more than a simple ramp. As for the Valley Temple, it was built in 2 phases. The foundations were first laid out in limestone during Menkare's reign, but the temple itself was completed in mud brick afterwards. As such, the Valley Temple was soon damaged and ended up being completely rebuilt during the 6th dynasty.
Yeah, the good thing about I don't know if you got the season pass or not, but this is free. You don't need to pay for this to get it. It is a separate menu option from playing the game, so do have season pass. Yeah, so me too. It didn't take me long after I started playing the game to realize that I was going to get the season pass, which I really don't do that often. Here's some more of that same picture, looks like. Pyramid of Giza.
Three small structures, referred to as Menkaura's Queen's Pyramids, were erected along the southern side of the main pyramid. One of them was a smooth-faced pyramid, while the other two were more basic step pyramids. It is difficult to assess whether the latter were designed as such or were left unfinished with no casing to smooth out their surfaces.
View of the pyramids south of the third pyramid by Mr. Howard and person pairing. Yeah, the Curse of the Pharaohs, which is the last DLC that they're going to do. They're just doing the 2. It comes out on the 13th, I believe. They're raising the level cap. Hidden Ones race it to 45.
The easternmost pyramid was built
Curse
with the
races to
traditional rooms
55.
and corridors found within a satellite pyramid meant to house the king's Ka. However, a granite sarcophagus was found within, leading to the conclusion that it was used as an actual tomb rather than as a symbolic cenotaph. Drawing on these observations, some assume that this pyramid was first built as a satellite pyramid for the king's Ka, before seeing its purpose change to that of a queen's tomb. Which queen, however, remains a mystery.
There's a lot of mysteries around a lot of this stuff. Entrance to the 4th and 5th pyramid. Well, it depends on which ones you've played. Graveyard Yard. Probably my favorite Assassin's Creed game is number 2, which is the first one with Ezio in it. But this one is up there. I can promise you, this one is up there on the list. Way up there on the list. It's be near the top. Depending on what they do with Curse of the Pharaohs, I may move it ahead of Black Flag, because right now Black Flag is number 2 for me. This one is knocking on the door. Learn about the geography and importance of the Fayoum. Alright, we've just got the Egypt section left. About how many were there? Like 8 of them. It will be all done. The Fayoum. 8 stops, 9 minutes.
Welcome to the Fayoum. The Fayoum Oasis is an enormous basin in the western desert that formed from the Nile's overflow. As such, it is not considered a true oasis, though it gives its name to the region, which covers Lake Moeris. The oasis harbors some of the oldest archaeological artifacts of the region, indicating that the area has been inhabited by hunters and gatherers since the Neolithic period.
Tool. Okay, very, very descriptive. Egypt, Fayoum, along the road between Fayoum and the Giza pyramids. Almost looks like an arrowhead, the way it's carved. Notched.
The Fayoum Oasis drains into Lake Moeris, which was a large freshwater lake, but at some time became a saltwater lake. In the 12th dynasty, ancient Egyptians redirected the water flow with a dam and dug a supply canal using the lake as their reservoir. Irrigation enabled them to continue growing crops of figs, grapes, and olives year-round.
Oh, here's where we get our boat.
Reed boats, feluccas,
Feluccas, that's what it is.
were the most commonly found
I couldn't
craft
remember the
within
name of these
landlocked
boats.
waters of Egypt.
Felucca.
They were used for various purposes, ranging from daily fishing, trade, warfare, and travel, to the ferrying of massive stone blocks used to build the great monuments of Egypt.
Medicine house. Nitotic scene. Pygmy hunt. 1st century. Yeah, these are the things that the Egyptian Uber drivers nag you with. Once you get in the water, man, they start swarming you. Need a lift? Need a ride?
The most impressive pyramids of ancient Egypt date from the Old Kingdom and can be found on the sites of Giza, Saqqara, and Dashur.
Cubes?
However,
Looking for
one
cubes?
particularly famous pyramid of the time is located elsewhere. During the Middle Kingdom, some pharaohs chose the Fayum as their final resting place. One such ruler was Amenemhat III.
Amenemhat.
His pyramid left a mark on the imagination of antique chroniclers. They refer to it as the Labyrinth, mostly due to the vast mortuary temple complex at the foot of the pyramid. Herodotus mentioned that he had visited 12 courts and over 3,000 of its chambers. But he was also well known for being prone to hyperbole.
Hawara. We saw that one earlier too. Lots of reuse in some of the pictures. Oh. Croc. Incoming Croc. Oh. I need to transfer your C-Star. I need to transfer your cubes and stuff from Twitch. Because you certainly have more than 260 cubes. And your hours. All of that stuff needs to get transferred.
Amenemhat's pyramid was built with a brick core and covered with stone slabs, designed to be impenetrable. The burial chamber, made out of a single block of sandstone, is unique in its design. Richard Lepsius and Flinders Petrie both explored the pyramid site, measuring 385 meters by 158 meters, and identified it as the location of the labyrinth. Their research conditions were difficult, as most of the site had been submerged by the nearby canal. Furthermore, the stones from the complex and the outer casing of the pyramid had been quarried away long ago. Ubisoft decided to give life back to this lost monument and the many crypts that were said to be devoted to the sacred crocodile god, Sobek.
All right, try it again, C-Star. Okay. Let's say Fayum situation plan of the labyrinth and its pyramid by Lepsius. No, I didn't do anything. Thank you. Thank you for all those hours and your subscription and your support and all of that stuff. Oh no, we're going off the path. Oh, yeah, speaking of that, if you're going to get a lottery ticket, you better go get it. You got 2 hours.
Founded during the 5th dynasty, the site was popular during the 12th dynasty under the name of Shedet. During the Ptolemaic era, the metropolis was named Crocodilopolis by the Greeks in honor of the crocodile god Sobek. During the Greco-Roman era,
Elizabeth Sobek,
soldiers of the Ptolemies, settled there after
Horizon
their
Zero
military
Dawn
service
crossover
and
confirmed.
expanded the irrigation systems. Irrigation and water distribution tripled the arable land and turned the city into a lush and rich area. 27,000 inhabitants lived in its precinct at its height. The city's location was strategic in controlling the many small waterways connecting to the main canal, and thus the Nile.
Crocodilopolis. It's where the gladiator arenas is. I know, right? And I'm older than you. Assuming that 1970 is what I think it is in your name.
The region's main cult was that of Sobek of Shedet, a divinity associated with water and fertility, both very important to an area that depended on irrigation. Many local villages had the title Town of Sobek added to their official designations. During festivals, ancient Egyptians recited hymns to Sobek, asking for his divine intervention. Greek settlers, and later Romans, would help the Temple of Sobek's economy to flourish by adopting the local embalming mortuary rites. Their sarcophagi were beautifully painted
The hell is
and
that?
adorned with amazingly realistic portraits.
Besides annoying, Steel of Amarut, worshipping the crocodile god Sobek. Oh, it's just a part of the bridge. I don't know how many times I've heard that in this game. I don't even know. I still don't know what it means.
Very similar to the cult of the Apis bull in Memphis, a living crocodile was worshipped within the precinct of Crocodilopolis temple. Known as Sobek to the Egyptians and Sukkos to the Greeks, It was reported by Strabo that priests fed it with meat, wine, and honeyed milk. They covered its body with jewels and gold.
It's albino, right?
After its death, it was embalmed and placed within the crocodile's grotto, alongside thousands of other mummified crocodiles.
Divine cats, Egyptians believed. The cats were sacred. Yes, I did, and I actually made them smaller, and I added some to the right. Those 3 buttons that you see on the right, those just put links in the text, or in the chat, for those things. I figured those were fairly important to have easy access to for folks that need them. Yeah, I tried to fix those too. Tried to fix a lot of things. City of Memphis.
You can still use photo. Welcome to the City of Memphis. Throughout all ancient Egyptian periods, cities had one thing in common. They were situated along the Nile's shores. Cities were often designated for government or for worship. Major cities had several temples dedicated to numerous gods and goddesses. Egyptians referred to the organization of their cities as a sepat, or later on by the Persian term nome.
Nome, yeah.
There were 20 sepat in Lower Egypt and 22 in Upper Egypt. The capital city of ancient Egypt changed many times over the periods.
Figures of various gods. Apis, Ta. Can't read some of them. Cairo.
One of the largest was Memphis, located in Lower Egypt. It was a key center for religious temples, including their most important deity, Ptah, god of creation. Thebes, located in Upper Egypt, competed with Memphis and featured as both a political and a religious center. 2 important temples, Luxor and Karnak, were built there. A minor capital of the Sayyid dynasty was the city of Sais. This was the last native Egyptian capital of Egypt.
Oh, Sea Star, no, I guess did your bike tires go flat? That's the usual excuse around here, is when you don't make it, your bike tires go flat. All right, Khonsu Temple, Urgetti's Gate, Karnak. Maybe.
During the Third Dynasty, under Pharaoh Djoser, Memphis became the first religious and administrative capital of Egypt. Even when the political capital of Egypt decentralized itself, pharaohs were crowned in this sacred city in order to legitimize their ascension to the throne, up to and including Alexander the Great. Though little remains today save ruins south of Cairo, we can guess at the structure of the city, which stretched up to 5 kilometers in length and 2 kilometers in width.
Yeah, we saw this picture earlier tonight, actually. Pyramids at the top, the Nile at the bottom.
Memphis was also referred to as the City with the 100 Doors, or the White Walls. These names were in reference to the wall which surrounded the city. Under the protection of Ptah, god of craftsmen, the city was a thriving religious and economic hub.
Cult image of the god Ptah. That was a quick one. Yeah, this is one we already did. No! No, I didn't want to do that one. We've already done enough of these. We don't need to be duplicating any of them. Major exports of Cyrene. Cyrene is in the upper left-hand corner of the map, northwest corner. Learn about the major sources of economic wealth for Cyrene. Start the tour.
Welcome to Major Exports of Cyrene.
Cyrene.
Cyrene's main source of economic wealth was in the cultivation and export of poppies and silphium. Though the opium oil from the poppies was also an export, little is known about this crop. Information about the cultivation of silphium, however, is more accessible to us.
Cypriot ring-based juglet. The inverted poppy shape suggests that the jars once held opium, which is made from the sap.
Silphium, with its yellow flower, was considered a gift from the sun god. Grown solely in this region near the Mediterranean Sea, silphium extract was exported at high prices and was so crucial to the wealth of Cyrenaica that it was depicted on their coins.
Yep. On the back. Cyrene silver coin, head of Ammon. Reverse silphium.
Silphium's roots produced a resin used by both the Greeks and Romans in medicines intended to cure cough, fever, indigestion, and many other ailments.
Drug trade, yes.
It was also used as a contraceptive.
Oh, contraceptives.
In a compilation of culinary recipes from the 4th century BCE, the herb is mentioned in various recipes, including a flamingo dish.
Face of Aphrodite and Eros. Classical antiquity. Did we do another one already?
High demand, overexploitation, and possibly a shift in climate all contributed to the eventual extinction of silphium. The last mention of it dates from the 4th century CE, and to this day, no traces of this plant have been identified.
Wow. Extinction of silphium. Arcesistaus, the two king of Cyrene, supervising the weighing and storing of silphium. I think I picked the wrong one. I was trying to get that 6-minute one out of the way.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down
But I
view.
missed it. So I'll go back and do them in order. At least in the order that they appear. As close as we can, anyway. 305. fauna of ancient Egypt. Learn about the fauna of ancient Egypt. 3 minutes, 5 stops.
Welcome to Fauna of Ancient Egypt. Both domesticated and wild animals were features in ancient Egyptian bas-reliefs as early as the First Dynasty. While the variety of wildlife served as a reliable food source, it also influenced both culture and mythology.
Eyeshadow palette decorated with hyenas or Lycaon, Neolithic period.
Egypt's terrain allowed for a diverse range of animals, including panthers, rhinoceroses, elephants, and many variations of antelopes.
Gazelle, minus its horns. Oh no! No! I need to rewrite the bot. The streamer never gets killed and never loses. Hippos.
The Nile was home to many species of fish,
Hippopotami.
along with hippopotami and crocodiles.
What a crock. What a crock. Hippopotamus. William. Say hello to William, everyone. Oh, you can't get this close to these in the game. They will go after you in a heartbeat.
The wide variety of birds that populated the riverbanks, from raptors and waterfowl to songbirds, were all cataloged within Egyptian hieroglyphic signs. Encounters with reptiles and insects, such as cobras, scorpions, and scarabs, influenced hieroglyphs and art.
Wood and bronze statuette of Ibis, anthropomorphic Thoth. Ptolemaic era. Oh, we get a black one this time. You don't get your mounts from the main game during this. Whoa, hello. And you're not even carrying your gear or your weapons.
While all animals had sacred meanings, lions
You
in
get a bullet,
particular
and you get a
represented
bullet.
power
Everybody
and royalty
gets
to
a
ancient
bullet.
Egyptians. They were so prized by pharaohs that they were hunted to extinction within Egypt.
Artist sketch of Pharaoh spearing a lion. I think we've seen that one before too. Those can be quite difficult, obviously, if you're not prepared for them. That's one thing about this game, if you haven't heard me mention it before, even 3 levels difference between you and an enemy can make a big difference. Speaking of Crocs.
Welcome to Flora of Ancient Egypt.
Are you tired there, buddy? Can we pet the croc? What's up? They will also attack on site.
The climate and unique geography of the Nile Delta offered a wide variety of plant species. Many of these plants served as sustenance for ancient Egyptians and as crops for trade. The Nile's consistent seasons allowed Egypt to sustain itself for centuries.
Synegyum and Linferti, or Inaferti, I guess, in the fields of Iaru. Oh my God. Yeah, the crocodiles use their tails quite a bit
Possibly
as an
the
attack.
most useful of the plants was the papyrus. This tall sedge plant grew in abundance along the water's edge of the Nile. Commonly known for its use as paper, the ancient Egyptians found many other functions for it, including rope, sandals, and mats. Papyriform boats made from the plant are seen in paintings and reliefs, and were used in ritualistic ceremonies.
So I don't know why it keeps popping up that message over there. That's usually what it puts up if nobody joins the heist, right? Because you need 2 people to do it. We just did one and it still popped it up.
There were many types of trees along the River Nile, such as the date palm, carob, and tamarisk. The earliest fruit tree cultivated was the fig tree,
Figs!
followed by apple, pomegranate, and eventually olive trees during the era of the New Kingdom. Mango cultivation was the result of a late import from Asia during the Middle Ages.
Mangoes really aren't my thing for some reason. I don't know. Hand clutching an olive branch. Mangoes don't really do anything for me.
Some trees were associated with gods, such as the acacia with Horus. The divinities Thoth and Seshat were depicted inscribing the reign of the king into a Persea tree. The sycamore was connected with the goddess Iset, patron of the ritual of life.
Embodiments of divinity. Nesca. Bashuti. Scribe. Counter of grain in the granary of divine offerings on Amun. Of Amun. Oh, that was a short one. Founding of Cyrene.
Welcome to Cyrene. Cyrenaica stretches across the coast of northwest Africa. It was known as Pentapolis in antiquity, a reference to the 5 main cities that formed the Greek colonies. Built on a lush plateau of the Green Mountains, in what is present-day Libya, a colony of Greek settlers formed the city of Cyrene in 630 BCE. Cyrene's population quickly grew, spreading out across the terraces of the plateau, making it the first and largest of the 5 colonies.
You've seen that map before?
The city of Cyrene was founded by Batos Aristotle, guided by the Oracle of Delphi. Overcrowded and suffering from drought, Batos's home island of Thera could not sustain its citizens. Batos consulted the oracle, who told them to journey to the North African coast in search of arable land. A series of kings reigned over the city in the first 2 centuries. However, rebellion eventually ended the monarchy, and henceforth the city was governed by the aristocracy.
Arcesilaus II, king of Cyrene, supervisor. Oh, we already saw that one. We saw that one earlier.
The key features of Cyrene were temples dedicated to gods, Apollo, Demeter, and Zeus, alongside Ptolemaic gods such as Isis and Serapis. A large agora defined the city's center, and on the western edge, the famed Acropolis was built. A fortification wall was added around the harbor at the end of the 2nd century CE. As the city grew, more buildings were constructed beyond the walls.
There's our buddy Jean-Claude doing more drawings for us. I wonder, since these were done in 2016, if he's an artist for Ubisoft. It would make sense.
Under Roman influence, Cyrene became an economic powerhouse, rising in status throughout the Mediterranean. Cyrene's School of Medicine rivaled all others except for that of the Greek city Kos. Some of the great minds in ancient math, astronomy, and geography were born or established in the various schools of the city, which included an institute of philosophy founded by Aristippus, a pupil of Socrates.
Two-faced bust. No, I haven't. Is that recent? Or is that something that's been around for a while? Two-faced bust, likely Aristippus of Cyrene and his daughter, Arete. Doesn't look like two faces to me.
From 115 to 117 CE, there was a revolt in the Jewish quarter that greatly damaged the city of Cyrene.
Excuse me.
Over time, a succession of battles, poor management of its silphium crop, and earthquakes eventually took their toll on the
I'm
city.
sure.
It was completely abandoned
That
in
does not
365
surprise me.
CE.
Statue of draped woman, Acephalus, found in Cyrene's ruins, 2nd century. Yeah, that's Apophis's ship. Oh, we figured it out.
The nearby port of Apollonia was an ideal location, with its natural cove, sheltered by 2 islands and rocky inlets. Along with a lighthouse, the port was later equipped with quays and warehouses.
Quays?
To accommodate the
Wow, I
increased
would have
shipping
never
traffic.
guessed that that's what that word was pronounced like. Quays is pronounced keys? Apollonia.
With its success as a commercial trading port, Apollonia surpassed Cyrene to eventually become the capital of the Pentapolis. A number of earthquakes gradually shifted the city, causing many of its original structures to sink. Some of its ruins can still be seen underwater.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Apollonia's fate. Apollonia ruins on landscape against cloudy sky. You're welcome. This kind of stuff's always been interesting to me. Now I can't guarantee how much of all of this I've retained over the last 3 days, but it's all very interesting to me. I mentioned this earlier, you weren't here when I mentioned it, but it's got me started watching XG1 again. I have all the box sets for all 10 seasons.
If you have some time, check out Alexandria. It's one of the greatest cities in antiquity.
The Agora and thermal baths.
Welcome to the Agora and thermal baths.
Agora. The only reason I pronounce it Agora is because there's a restaurant near where I work that's spelled the same way, and that's how they pronounce that. Cafe Agora.
Cyrene's Agora was the public marketplace and political hub of the city. Its central courtyard was open to the sky, while market stalls and shops ran along the sides, some neatly tucked away under long-roofed colonnades. As in other Greek cities, the Agora included a central hearth, known as a Prytaneum. This place served as Cyrene's official embassy, where guests were welcomed to the city.
Apparently very breezy, too. Mr. Golvan makes another contribution. Cyrene Agora.
An unnamed statue representing naval victories was the centerpiece of the Agora. The statue's female figure likely represents Nike, the goddess of victory. It was likely very similar to the victory of Samothrace, which currently resides in the Louvre Museum and served as a reference for the team.
What is that? That just looks like somebody stacked up some scraps. That's not a monument, that's a pile of rubble.
The Cyrene Agora also displayed many temples and monuments celebrating its founding king, Batos, and the city gods. There were 2 altars associated with the Temple of Apollo, and a marble statue base dedicated to the goddess Libya.
Oh, headless. Possible tomb of Batos, archaeological site of Cyrene in Libya.
The civic buildings included a law court complete with an archive library that would have housed legal documents and other papers essential to the city's governance. Traces of fire damage to the building's remains indicate that it was possibly destroyed during the rebellion of the Jewish community in 115 CE.
Can we go in? That's interesting. That's the first time we've had to do anything like that in the entire thing. It's all been very open. I don't know what the purpose of that loop was right there. something? Guess I walked right by it. Apparently so.
Public baths were common in Roman and Greek cities, and Cyrene held true to this tradition. 2 thermal baths from different eras were discovered among the ruins. An inscription at the entrance of one of the baths is presumed to be attributed to the owner. It dates the building to the Hellenistic period.
Hadrian's Baths, Sanctuary of Apollo. There we go. Oh, same thing. Rather
Mosaics were originally created for practical reasons, the need to waterproof floors. Imported by Greeks in Egypt and Cyrenaica, the designs represented either scenes from daily life, marine fauna, or mythological figures. In addition to traditional Greek motifs, they also integrated concepts specific to Egyptian culture, such as the Nelumbo. The best examples of mosaics recovered to date, however, come from Alexandria.
Oh, wow, that's an intricate one there. Mosaic of the Nile, 1st century, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. Nope.
The Cyrene baths were fitted into an underground tomb dated somewhere between the 8th and 6th century BCE. Bath seats were carved directly in the rock, allowing for more comfortable ablutions. As with many of the public buildings, the thermal baths were elaborately decorated. Statues such as Aphrodite and Eros the Archer were discovered within.
Venus, Anadyomene, excavated at the bath, 2nd century BCE.
The Frigidarium, a pool of cold
Frigidarium.
water, was the first room visitors entered. It was followed
Predecessor
by the
to the
Tepidarium,
refrigerators.
or tepid water area, and then the hot water room called the Caldarium. Water for the thermal baths was sourced from a natural spring. Burning stones were deposited into the water to create steam as required. The flowing water of the spring ended in a cistern and fountain referred to as the Aqua Augusta. Later Roman baths were built under Emperor Trajan and then restored under Hadrian. After the earthquake of 365 CE, they were replaced by baths of Byzantine design, with stones from the old thermal baths used in the reconstruction. The team relied on documentation describing the baths built under Trajan in order to create the location available in the game.
Important monuments and the Acropolis. Acropolis will be the last one. Learn about the Sanctuary of Apollo and the Amphitheater of Cyrene.
Welcome to Important Monuments of Cyrene. The Sanctuary of Apollo sits on a prominent edge of the plateau of Cyrene, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. It could be accessed either by the road from Apollonia, via the necropolis, or by the Sacred Way, coming from the agora of the city.
wow. Sanctuary of Apollo archaeological site of Cyrene in Libya, 2007.
The abundance of temples and statues throughout the city reflect the various Greco-Roman and Egyptian cult influences over the centuries. Temples dedicated to Apollo, Cyrene, and Zeus stood alongside those of Ptolemaic gods, such as Serapis and Isis. Numerous fountains were decorated to represent other gods, including the city's namesake, Cyrene.
Kurotropic, Isis nursing Harpocrates, Horus child, terracotta from Cyrene.
A vestibule known as a propylaeum marked its entrance and highlighted the fountain of Apollo. God of the sun and of protection, Apollo was an important deity to both Greeks and Romans. The sanctuary built in his honor was considered to be sacred. The imposing
Tourists
temple was built on a
going
natural
off the beaten
cornice,
path.
stretching more than 200 meters in length and roughly 50 meters in width, and was surrounded by a vast Doric colonnade. Sections uncovered by archaeologists indicate restorations to the columns were made between 115 and 116 CE.
This looks like a closer up section of the one that we just looked at. Yep.
The altar was located in front of the temple. Both are estimated to be the same age, though restored at different times. Many bulls were sacrificed each year at the altar in honor of Apollo. The imprint in the stone of the ring used to strap the animals down is visible to this day.
Another drawing. Skip that. Yeah, especially the library, man. I know I've said it before, but that library,
The
man.
Apollo Cytharide was discovered near the temple. It is considered an important archaeological find.
It's another shell.
The statue of Apollo was in pieces when it was uncovered. Remarkably, most fragments were found, and the restored statue is currently at the British Museum. The team extrapolated the statue's final look based on the current partial reconstruction and placed it inside the temple to reflect the patron deity of the area.
Apollo Cytharide. Yeah, see, it's not covered up there, but it is there. Maybe because one is an actual picture and the other is a representation of it? I don't know. It's all kind of silly if you ask me.
The amphitheater of Cyrene is located on what is known as the Terrace of Myrtosa, next to the sanctuary of Apollo. It was built on top of the old theater in the 2nd century. Originally used as a stage, the theater became an amphitheater.
What's wrong with that
once
dude?
The taste for Roman gladiatorial entertainment reached the city.
He's spazzing out on us. Theater mask from Cyrenaica. Early Roman Empire. Kind of gold ring or something on the top of it looked like. Yeah, look at this guy. Excuse me, sir, you okay? Can I help you? Oh, he killed him! He's disappeared! Oh, dude! Oh, man! Do you realize what you've done?
Entrances were placed at both ends of the amphitheater.
Exactly.
A wall replaced the first 2 rows of bleachers as protection from the array of wild animals.
You're
in the
gonna
ring.
die for that.
The tunnel used for the parade of beasts and gladiators circled the arena, unlike the Roman Colosseum's tunnel, which was beneath the amphitheater. The basement and corridors accommodated both the gladiators and the animals, and included lifts that raised the traps into the arena's center.
Another drawing. That one's got a little bit less detail than some of the other ones that he did.
Since the original theater was close to the cliffside, the expansion didn't allow for a perfect circle. Instead, junctions of the semicircle formed the arena into an oval shape. This elliptical formation still ensured an excellent view from all angles. The team decided to create a perfectly round theater for technical reasons, and used the structure of the Roman theater as their reference.
Sinew flying around above, guarding us, keeping an eye out. Alright, the Acropolis. Oh, there's only three stops in 5 minutes. This would be about perfect timing, too.
Welcome to the Acropolis of Cyrene.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Located on the western edge of the city,
It is
Cyrene's
pretty uncanny,
Acropolis
isn't
was
it?
smaller than the one in Athens, though its high vantage point provided protection for the city. At its entrance was a single door, flanked by 2 towers. An inscription, legible to this day, states that the walls and the citadel were restored in the time of Augustus.
And I didn't take a break today either, so I wanted to make sure we got it all done in time. So I skipped my break today. And yes, I do have to go. I do have to go pee. Position and Plan of Cyrene by Beachy and Walker in Proceedings of the Expedition to Explore the Northern Coast of Africa. Excuse me.
A number of statuettes have been excavated from the site, including one of Berenice, the daughter of Magus, the king of Cyrene, and half-brother of Ptolemy II. At the northeast tower, there is a sanctuary consisting of 2 small temples with a vestibule, and an altar believed to be that of Serapis and Isis. When the temples were excavated, archaeologists found traces of fire damage. However, there are no indications as to when this fire occurred.
Fires wrecked a lot of stuff back then, huh? Portrait of Berenice II. Excuse me, sir. Coming through. Magi coming through.
In the 20th century, a fortification was built above the ward to defend against an invading army. It covered the ancient remains of nearby Roman houses entirely, and archaeologists have yet to fully excavate them.
That's it. We did them all. We did them all. All done. It was what? 3 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours. So 11. Oh yeah, by the way, there is you saw a lot of references to BCE and CE and all that stuff. There's a timeline that they're referring to. So if you have the game and you're interested in seeing that, not a problem. Thank you very much for coming out. You're welcome. All right. Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to do was, how do I get out of here? Go back to the title screen. I did go back and find some more quests. We're not going to do any of them now. What we'll do is, I mentioned this before, I think there's like 7 or 8 of them in the list. Save those for when we do Curse of the Pharaohs. And when we start those streams, we'll start off, because we will have had the title update by then that increases the level cap as well. So we'll start the stream probably by doing those first, just so that we make sure. I mean, there's no achievement or anything for hitting the level cap, but and we probably won't have an issue hitting it anyway because we didn't for the hidden ones. But yeah, we'll start off with those. Take a look at them.
A lake of tears high in the mountains.
Let's see, quests. Yeah, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I found 8 of them. So yeah, when we get back to those,
Apollo means me to find this halo of the hundred.
I'm gonna have to look and see what the. Usually I go to howlongtobeat.com to get a rough idea of how long it's gonna take to go through a game, and add about 25% of that on top of that for me, because I tend to be a little bit slower than most people, and that's how I generally determine how many days to set aside, at least initially, for doing any particular game. And obviously as we needed, like for this, for example, you know, we were supposed to originally start Shadow of the Colossus yesterday, but because people like the Discovery Tour stuff so much after doing it on Wednesday, we decided to go ahead and do the whole thing. So that's why we did it last night, and we did it tonight again as well, so we can make sure that we got it all. So I'm glad everybody enjoyed that. I enjoyed it too. Like I said earlier, I don't know how much of it I retained, but it was good to hear a lot of this. I've learned a bunch of stuff. Got the last achievement in the game, at least for now as well. So back to 100% on those. So yeah, that's going to be it. We are off tomorrow. No stream tomorrow. We'll be back at it on Monday with Shadow of the Colossus. Going back to PS4. We're going to play the PS4 version, not the original. Thank you, Alien King. I appreciate it. Thank you, C-Star. You too. Thank you for coming out. And welcome back to the States. Thank you, AP. I appreciate that as well. So, yeah. 3 hours Monday, 3 hours Tuesday, 3 hours Wednesday, Shadow of the Colossus. I think it's not that long as I recall. Maybe 15 hours, 20 hours. So, we should be done with Shadow of the Colossus by the time Curse of the Pharaohs comes out. My hope is that we can start Curse of the Pharaohs the day that it comes out, which is the 13th. So, cross your fingers. We will be playing it, you know, that depending on how things work out, we'll either start it on the 13th or we'll start it after we finish Shadow of the Colossus, whichever is shorter. You're welcome, Gosh. Thank you for coming out as well. Thanks everybody for coming out. So that's going to be it for me tonight. Let me turn off the interactive stuff. Don't forget to do that. So that should disappear from your screens. I have a second bot that does that. It's called Firebot. Those of you that are interested to stream on Mixer. So anyway, yep, that's it for me. Thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for the hosts. Thank you for the follows, all the new folks out there. Thanks for the love. Misbehave had to go earlier, so thanks for her for coming out as well. And I will see you guys on Monday for Shadow of the Colossus on PS4. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you later.